Here we go, guys. Thursday night, CrossFire in New York. Buddy, I got to be honest with you, this is going to be a great night. A great panel, as you guys can see. I'm overwhelmed by the amount of great people on the show tonight. Great chat already. Talked to a lot of you guys before the show went live. Please do me a favor here, folks, while we kind of wait for everyone to kind of trickle in. Please hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Your name comes up in lights. Also, tweet it out. Let everybody know that we are live. I want to give a shout out. Let me see if I can scroll back far enough. Highlander Grimm, who joined the Mooch Maniac family members before the show went live. I want to say what's up to you. I see a lot of new people out there. I see Cybers out there. What's going on? Jack Knife, great to see you as well. King Oz, he's out there. Albert, Composite Smurf, Sam Walton. Guys, again, hit that like button and smash it. I really would like to see, we get such a great crowd here every single Thursday night. And I know for all you guys that are listening later on, aren't listening live and catch the show later over the weekend, I want to say, please hit that like button. Even if you usually don't, I want to see if we can get up to 500 likes on the show. It'd mean the world to me, and I think it does a world for YouTube. Who knows? Who knows? I haven't done the algorithm. I don't want to do math when we're talking about games. All right? But let YouTube do that. Nonetheless, we got a great show for you. Let's get to this amazing panel. We got a lot of topics. The over-under on tonight's topics, probably three. We had 4 last week. We hit 4. We'll do 3 this week. We'll see. I gave the guys 11. Let's see if we can get to 3 of them. Nonetheless, shout out to Anonymous Boss as well. I appreciate all the work you do out there. You guys know him. You love to hate him. You don't hate to love him. The great Death Singer. Death Singer, you absolutely amaze people week in and week out. I don't know how you do it, buddy, but I'm glad you're here. How you doing this evening?
I just love writing up tweets.
You certainly do.
I just love it because you put the tweet out there, you hit the mute button, and then you just let them have at it, and then you log back in, like, I don't know, 12 hours later, and you're like, that's hilarious, and then keep it going. I mean, it's going to get a rise out of people, right? When I put it out there, like, when I'm writing the tweets that I write, I know it's going to get a response. So I'm like, okay.
Oh, you certainly do get a response. But Desinger, I got to say, I give you credit. There's something that you can do that I can't do. I'd love to see the responses and respond back. You will wait hours sometimes before you respond to people, and you light a fire out there on X.
Yeah, because, I mean, see, the thing is, they want to argue with you, right? So you don't give them that. You wait a couple of hours. They completely forget about it. You respond.
I see.
Then you immediately hit mute again.
Well,
so you are now pissing them off because they don't have the opportunity to argue with you.
Well, I hope all you guys are taking notes out there because that is X101. Detzinger, great to have you here, buddy. Let me welcome the great Slow-Mo Backslap. Slow-Mo, I know that you're doing the great DPS tonight with Gaming Forte, but we're going to try and steal you as long as we can. Slow-Mo, how you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. Can you hear me pretty well?
You sound great, Slow-Mo. You always do.
Awesome. Look, I'm not going to cancel the show tonight. I know there's a lot of canceling going on today, don't worry about that. DPS will be going live at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, like Mook said. I'm glad to be here. Going to have a little fun with things. Everyone need to lighten up a little bit, but we'll see how it goes.
Well, yeah, we'll keep you posted, Slow-Mo, on keeping it easy. We'll see how that goes. Speaking of that, you guys are probably wondering, and we have a new panel member on tonight, which is a great guest, but the Mag is on tonight, and I'm wondering when I ask a question if he's going to say Mooch or if he's going to say Mag. No one really knows. Stay tuned for the ending. Mag, welcome back to the show, buddy. How you doing this evening?
I am doing fantastic, and what a show to have when you have breaking news that happened about 20 minutes before we go live.
I know.
And we got a lot to talk about tonight, I got to tell you. But listen, I'm not going to be canceled. I'll just be sidelined for just a little while. But anyways, let's get into the show. Let's talk about the corporal speech nonsense and everything else, and let's get into this.
Absolutely. And then there's the great Nib. You guys know, I actually had to fly him of my own money from Dubai back to England for the show. That's how much I love you guys. Nib, welcome back, buddy. I know you had a lot of stuff going on. Outstanding to have you here. I appreciate you taking the time to be here. How you doing today?
Yeah, mate, I'm not too bad. I'm on low sleep. I think I've had 2 hours.
Well, that's only half of the time of the podcast. So we've been going 4 on average with Nib. Yeah.
You know why that is? It's because America and sticking to tariffs, they're as reliable with that as Xbox is at sticking with tariffs.
Wow. Oh, the jabs are coming from all sides tonight, Nib. It's going to be great, buddy.
I do day trading, and yes,
I'm sure it was.
1 minute the court is cancelling tariffs, the next minute some reporter's winding Trump up, and he's going hardcore on China, and I'm just like, Oh, it's difficult to keep up, but yeah.
Nib's like, I'm just trying to buy and sell coffee today, okay? That's all I'm trying to do. Oats across the country. Nib, great to have you, buddy, with us tonight. And then our special guest, great to have Daniel Camillo with us. He's a consultant in business development and gaming. That's what he does primarily. Occasionally a contributor at GameIndustry.biz. Wrote a few articles for them and had absolutely caught X by storm the other day when he gets up with an outstanding take. Daniel, welcome to the show, buddy. I reached out to you the minute that your tweet went viral. Outstanding to have you. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, thank you. And thank you as well for flying me over from China to see
Yes! Only the best.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Great to have you here, Daniel.
Mooch,
So,
what side business are you running?
I don't know. This is how you got to get people on the show. You got to fly them in, Nib. That's just the way it works. You know, first class. By the way, I'm noticing, you guys seeing this? YouTube is literally doing that new thing right now where the commercial comes on the side of the show. I feel like I'm actually the pre-show to the Knicks-Pacers game. It's so professional, guys. I actually dig that. That's cool.
That's about time, like a soccer game where they can't stop the action, or even in a hockey game. And yeah, they'll put the commercial on the side. So they're doing this now. Is this the new thing?
It just started tonight, I think. I saw them saying they were rolling something out.
That's smart. That's really smart. So then you know what ends up happening? The creators get their advertisement money.
Yeah.
Viewers are not able to skip over the ads, but at the same time, it's not intrusive enough it stops you from watching the show.
It's not. Listen, baseball does it.
That's actually a really good idea.
All the sports teams do it. I watch sports nightly. So I mean, it never stops me from watching the Mets or the Knicks. So let me do this. We got late breaking news. Of course, we got the great Mag here. Mag's got his ear to the ground. You guys know this. If you're not following him over on his YouTube channel, that's you're doing yourself a disservice, to be honest with you. But Mag, here it is. Okay, I'll start with you. Xbox dedicated handheld sidelined, in quotes, for now, concentrating on third-party partners. We knew that they were doing something, okay, with Asus and a couple of the other teams out there. Will this affect their next console? Two things. A, what do they mean by sidelined? And B, what does this mean for the future of Xbox consoles?
There will be no change to the strategy for the actual Xbox console that's going to be coming out in a couple of years, 2027. But the handheld strategy, which I thought was a mistake from the get-go, this is not going to be happening. Now, when they say things like sidelined, I spoke to somebody else just before we went live on the show, and someone who's there at the camp, and when they say sidelined, that's corporal speak for it's not coming ever. Yeah. What ends up happening is they're just waiting for, time heals all wounds for people who are waiting for this. I mean, all four of them. And then what ends up happening is that it just disappears into the ether and it's just forgotten, right? And it just gets pushed to the side, pushed under the rug, and then they never speak about it again. And then one day, 6 years from now, someone might be like, hey, weren't they supposed to come out with a handheld? And they'll be like, I don't know. And then you just move on with your life. And that's what they're kind of hoping for. They just push it under the rug. That's all there is to it. This is not sidelined. This is canceled. I am telling you, this is canceled. And that's all there is to it. Now, I want to get into why this didn't make sense from the beginning. I said it on XNC with Cole. I said this is a redundant waste of time. And I said, because they've already got a Steam Deck out there, sold 4 million, and even 4 million is not exactly, that's not burning down the house. ROG Ally, as we talked about before the show, looks like it's sitting at around 800,000 sold. Where was this thing going to sell? And so when I was looking at, first of all, Microsoft raised the prices of their hardware to begin with, which, again, I could sort of figure out why, because I think they're done losing money on consoles and they'll just sell what they're going to sell. And then as long as they get engagement somewhere else, I think that's their focus. Their focus is no longer selling hardware. And we clearly see that as, look at North America, they're being beaten 5-1 from PlayStation specifically. And then the Switch 2 hasn't even launched yet. Right. So at this point, you start wondering to yourself, how much is this thing going to cost? Right. And then now I'm thinking about it. And the only thing that comes to mind, like financial feasibility, is somewhere between $600 and $700. At that point, that would be for the lower end. And then, of course, when you talk about the memory and the storage and everything else that's going into it, the price goes up from there. Who's this for? Who is buying this? Right. Because, you can access the Xbox ecosystem from the Steam Deck anyway in ROG Ally. What is the point of this other object that someone's going to pay damn near $700 and up US dollars, like I said, up here in Canada, and it'd be like $1,100 to $1,200. This is not an impulse buy. This is a buy for a very small market. So now if you start taking this away, you look at it, it's going to a niche, to a niche, to a nicher, to a niche market. Right. So it's such a small market that what was the point of even doing this? I think at that point, again, like I said, I was talking about it with some of the other guys there, even the guys in the Xbox community were saying the same thing. They're like, who's this for? So, and at that point, I think they knew that there was no point in doing this. Focus on your hardware for next generation. And then that's all there is going to be to it. Like I said, it will not affect their next generation console coming out in 2027. But it will, obviously, this thing is never going to see the light of day, and I can absolutely assure you that. So now the thing is, once again, focus on your next-gen hardware, focus on your third-party publishing arm, which is obviously doing very well, right? PlayStation players are buying it. I mean, we'll talk about Doom in a minute, but I mean, for the most part, a lot of those other engagement sales over on PlayStation, for example, are actually doing quite well, dependent on the title. Again, we'll talk about it later in the show. So the third party publishing arm is doing fine. Looks like Game Pass PC is doing good. The Xbox console, not so much across the board. Right. So I just did a video yesterday talking about that, about engagement on Game Pass, and I actually pulled up all the numbers. I pulled up the percentages of how far people are getting into these games that are being offered to them, and some of them, I mean, some of them are going up. So I was happy to see that. I'm like, listen, if you guys want them to pay attention to you, they work on metrics. They don't work on what Mag says. They don't work about, they don't base their business structures on what Mooch says.
That's right.
Or
they should.
Nib.
They should.
Or Death Singer.
That's right.
They should. I know they should.
That's right.
But but the thing is, that's not, they work on metrics alone. And I said, if you're not engaging, then they're not paying attention to you. I said, so if you want to continue to have your you want to be you want to get any form of attention from this company, this ecosystem, you've got to engage more. So that's, I did a video about that yesterday, talking about that. So this is one of those instances where you're going to have a hardware that's going to kind of die on impact, especially at a price point, which I would assume would be unattainable for a lot of people. You remember everybody was screaming about a $700 PS5 Pro.
That's right.
And now you're looking at a Series X, which is, with a base model essentially from 5 years ago,
$700,
now $30 more.
Yeah, or more.
Right?
That's right. Yeah, if you're looking at
more.
the correct,
isn't it $730?
$730.
Yeah. So now it's right. So it's $30 more. This handheld was dead on arrival because it was going to be no less than $650 to $700.
Either way. So let me say this. So Meg, you said a lot of great things, and I'll bring Daniel in here because I know Slow-Mo's chomping at the bit, and so's Nib here. But Daniel, let me ask you a question here from you having your ear to the ground as well in the business. The one thing I hear when Meg says that, he says, listen, 2027 is still on schedule. But I think Microsoft really is looking at the analytics here. They're looking at all the numbers. They're looking at what's coming in. They look at how much money they're making on their hardware, what's happening with their streaming services. And the situation here, I guess I'll ask you is, A, are you shocked about the, in quotes, sidelined handheld? And do you think this may affect 2027? Because if they could pull the plug on something like this, I understand this is a niche market, like Mag was saying, not an apples for apples comparison. But if they're not selling hardware, Daniel, will they possibly think about pushing back or scaling back or not at all doing hardware in the future and just maintaining their course with third-party relations? They're doing very well with that.
About the handhelds, I agree with pretty much everything that's been said. I would just add that yes, it's a very niche segment of the market, as we know from sales from Steam Deck and all. There's also a few other companies like Ieno and 1X Player or 1Player X, I think it's 1X Player, that also produce that kind of like PC gaming handhelds. And Ieno, I think that's the name at least, they have sold a few 100,000 devices.
Ieno.
Yeah, exactly. I know a few people who work for that company. They're from here where I live in Shenzhen. The thing is, they have different models. They have high-end models. They have medium range, like low spec range and everything. So they have sold a few 100,000. And I think if a company would get into that market, they would probably have to do that way, to have different models and not just one, like Asus has, and like even Steam Deck. Although Steam Deck is doing okay, but again, it's still very niche. Now about the console, I mean, I from my end, I can only speculate. But Microsoft, they did promise. They said, Sarah Bond, right, last year that this year or last year even there would be a new hardware, and of course now we know it was they meant the SKUs with the 2 terabytes and all that stuff. And then we had those leaks, those PowerPoints that showed like a cylindrical Xbox and all that stuff. So I think what we notice here, what we've been noticing for this whole generation, is that Microsoft is constantly reacting to whatever is happening, like almost on a quarterly base. They don't have like a long-term strategy. I mean, they do in terms of wanting to make Game Pass grow and all that, but in terms of hardware, it's like whatever happens tomorrow that may impact their bottom line, they will react to that. They will not uphold like whatever vision someone had for like 3 or 4 years ago. So for me, I keep seeing their hardware, like the console hardware, like basically like the Surface laptops and stuff like that. I think they will end up doing something like that. Just some branded Xbox console that's, it's something more generic, I guess. But it's because I'm a believer that hardware would have been the major pillar to grow Game Pass subscriptions, and Microsoft insisted the other way around. I really think so. Microsoft, with the money they have, if they had like cut down and take the losses for the hardware for Xbox and discounted the Xbox even with losses, now they could have like 50, 60, even maybe 100 million subscribers on Game Pass, and then that would create a snowball effect that would really grow the ecosystem. As they are now, it's kind of, they're still in that phase of chicken and egg where nothing is really growing the way they want. And I don't know, they need to be really radical. They need to be extreme with their hardware, or just drop out completely. That's my take. But
I think that's
I see this. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that's a great take, Daniel. To be honest with you, what you're saying is, it's kind of shit or get off the pot at this point. Not to be vulgar, but I'm just saying that's kind of what it is. They got they got a situation right now where they're making a strong push for their software. They're going third party. Their emphasis is definitely on Game Pass, as Mag said. PC growing steadily. I don't think growing rapidly. And on console, not so much. Slow-mo, I know I only have you for a little while as well. Slow-mo, what do you think about the news? And you heard what Mag had to say. You've heard Daniel's take on it. And these guys have their ears to the ground. And not that you don't at all either. You do as well. What do you think about this news and what the future hardware means for Xbox?
Well, I agree with both of them. And it's funny because, and this is no shade against Jez at all, but like the whole on hold thing, I didn't hear that at all. Like I heard it was canceled. Right. And multiple people told me this. And this was like 11 a.m., noon, like sometime in that time frame. So when I saw the article saying on hold, I'm like, yeah, that's just corporate speak. Yeah. Like that's not, there is no on hold. Everything's on hold, technically. Even the little dongle that's supposed to connect to your smart TV is officially on hold, but it's never, ever going to come out.
It's been on hold. Just,
it's not happening. And I understand the reasoning why, if you kind of think about it like this, like Steam Deck is the most successful PC handheld, and it's like 5 million units sold. That's it. And there isn't quite evidence of a market that will spend big money for a device like that. Like people bring up the Switch, but the Switch was much cheaper, and it's got specific software that you can't officially without going through a lot of stuff get easily in your hands. And so it's a bit different there. This device will be doing no different than you get from the Legion Go, the Steam Deck, the Asus, and I'm glad I mentioned Asus because another thing that I know of is that like they may have canceled the handheld, but they haven't completely done away with their plans with working with PC handhelds. They're still working on like an Xbox OS. And there may be an announcement of them partnering with Asus soon. So like there is that, but like that's going to be like their kind of substitute for not doing a PC handheld. They'll just work with a company that makes one. And then that would be like their branded PC handheld. They don't have to worry about the R&D for it. They don't have to actually make units, distribute it, and all that other stuff. They just kind of have a specific spec that Asus needs to stick to. And there you have it. Go ahead and throw our Xbox logo on a button somewhere, and you got your device, even though it's not
I think that makes them happy.
Official device.
I think that makes them happy too, Slum. I think that's where they're going. That's why. I listen. I know the first thing people say, "Oh, you're just saying that." I'm speculating, as Daniel said. I'm just speculating here as well. But I mean, to be honest with you, I don't see if they're backing out of having their own dedicated handheld, which they thought was going to be something big. They see the numbers aren't there. I understand handheld is not the same as a home console by no stretch of the imagination. We just said the numbers, right? Between 4 or 5 million for Steam Deck, and that's the most successful. But it does make me think that they are looking at hardware here, and they're going to question whether or not, now that their games are everywhere.
Mooch, the hardware that they are making, the traditional console they are making, will be the last piece of hardware that they release, if they release it.
Yeah.
I am of the mind that that's not even a guarantee, and I'm kind of in the minority on that, and I get that because it is something that they are actively working on, but I don't think it's going to come out. I think that there's going to be someday in the future, and I can't call it, it's all speculation.
Of course.
But they're just going to be like, okay, so our hardware has bottomed out. We are never in the positive. We never get any juice off of hardware. We changed our distribution chain where we don't supply shelves, but we do just-in-time distribution, which means we barely make units so that we're not spending too much money on something that we're not selling. Why are we making another hardware?
Right.
When we're already putting our games on everywhere and we're getting sales from that, we're getting traction with that, and we can just cut out this expense that keeps going. Sure, you're going to think, well, I get a lot of revenue. A good portion of the revenue that I generate on a monthly basis comes from console sales, console Game Pass. That's the biggest base for Game Pass. So why would I just throw that money away?
That's right.
Then if you think about it a little further, well, just because I choose not to make another piece of hardware doesn't mean that every Xbox Series X and S in the entire world just goes puff and disappear. Those people are still using those.
That's right.
Half of the people on the console generation are still using PlayStation 4s and Xbox Ones. So those people aren't going to just throw their Xboxes away and get a PC or a PlayStation 6. Simply because you didn't stop, you're not going to make another piece of hardware. I think once they realize this, they're just going to say, "No, I'm not doing it," and they'll cancel that too. Now, if they do go forward with it, it is already a guarantee. This is the last Xbox.
Right.
If they do launch one, there's not going to be another one. So, it is what it is. I'm not shocked by this, and I if anything, I was expecting them to cancel the traditional console because I think they know that's a loser. But the PC handheld, maybe this could work. But them going this route kind of makes me feel like the hardware altogether might eventually go. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I see Mr. Huck, he says PC, Xbox is what they will release. So a Steam box, basically. So Nib, you said you've got numbers, much like Mag. You heard what Slow-Mo just said. I mean, you got to kind of walk in line with Slow-Mo, Nib. You're a numbers guy as well. This is a situation right now where, again, I do think that I agree. They are working on a future Xbox console. Last console, I certainly do believe so. Do I think this thing could get scratched at some point, depending on how this them going from platform holder to publisher becomes very significant for them, and the numbers show that, Nib? Why would they? Listen, they're a big company. Nib, you say this all the time, dollars and cents, right? So if it doesn't make sense for them, why are they going to continue to do this hardware? You can see they've already backtracked on this. Smaller Notion, same thought process. What do you think?
So, putting my business hat on, I think there's probably the numbers we have still just about some incentive to do it because, from is it DNG? I forgot what they're called. The Take-Two uses them. I think the last estimate, there's some contention around where the Series X is. Some say sub 30, some are saying 32, 33, 34, etc. Let's just average out to 33, which is what I believe I read. 33 million units, yes, it's very poor. It's lower than the Xbox One time aligned. It's lower than the Xbox 360, I believe, time aligned. But it's still 33 million people with a potential 30% of whatever they buy digitally pie. And Xbox as a platform in particular leans far more digitally than Nintendo and PlayStation. I believe it's like 90% or something of their user base buys digitally. So,
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, so that's like a 30% cut of potentially millions of consumers. And I appreciate that a lot of Xbox consumers now are not buying as many games because they're sort of just committed to Game Pass and playing whatever's on there. But I still think the revenue from that is maybe, as of now, still maybe a little bit difficult to ignore. But as to whether they will cancel a future console or whatever, I think it will be based on whatever this new hardware is, how that does. Because they will want to see now, okay, in a world where we have all our releases on PlayStation and a lot of it on Nintendo as well, what sort of scope does Xbox hardware play in that market dynamic? Is there still room for this to procure an install base and for us to get that 30% cut still? I think that last generation will be like the ultimate test. Like this next hardware will be their final foray into seeing whether there still is potential for it. And if it sells well, I think they'll actually continue to do hardware. And if it does not do well, then yeah, maybe they'll throw in the towel. But I think right now it would still be, me personally, I think it still would be premature to cancel a console altogether. Because, at the end of the day, yeah, that 30% cut is still enticing. And they are starting to get that higher cadence and quality of sort of games on Game Pass. And you still need a conduit for that, whether it's on PC or the console. I happen to play Game Pass and all my games on the Xbox Series X, and to be fair, in future I would want to do that again, like rather than go up down the PC line. So we'll see. We'll see what they do. Obviously, we don't know, but I would say I believe there's still margin in that, because remember, on the PC side, they're not getting that 30% cut Steam is, and 30% of 33 million people's worth of purchases is a substantial amount.
Absolutely. Death Singer, you've heard the stats from everybody. You read the news just before the show went live. What do you think, Death Singer? I mean, where are you on this? Mooch and Crap, shout out to Mooch and Crap from back in 2017. We used to joke around, say PC is Xbox, Xbox is PC. That couldn't have been farther. It's the truth, for crying out loud, Death Singer. What do you think? Is that farther from the truth or no?
It is at this point, and it will be the future.
That's right.
It's like you may as well graduate now, because the writing's been on the wall for years. So go ahead and go get yourself a PC, or if you really are opposed to PC gaming, just go get yourself a PlayStation, because all the games will be over there anyway. So win-win either way, whichever way you go. But I'm glad they bailed on the handheld, because. It's like Steam Deck's the most popular out of the PC handhelds, and it did all right. Steam thinks it's done all right, and I mean, it is a really good piece of tech, but it's like you're not really gonna do much more than the Steam Deck. Like, no one can touch the Switch, so that's never gonna be a thing. So you're like, okay, well, let's just scrap it. And I'm glad they did. And to Slomo's point about them wanting to put their operating system everywhere, the thing is, the Steam operating system is so damn good that most of these people are going to opt to go Steam OS rather than Windows or Xbox OS, because
they already are, Singer. Actually, Steam OS is so far ahead of where they are with their Xbox OS plans. They are, and why would, say, I don't know, Logitech or what's it called? Not Asus, because they're partnered with them, but there we go. Why would they not go Steam OS when Steam OS now has GeForce Now natively in it? It's got you can basically do everything that Microsoft is telling them we're working on. Valve's already got that set up in Steam OS, so you're already behind the 8 ball. It's not. I'm not saying it's not going to work, but you're not the more popular option here.
Yeah, exactly. And the Steam OS has all the features and everything. Plus, it's also linked to a massive library anyway. Super easy to streamline, flick over, and as someone said, like people want the Steam OS, and they recently released 3.07, which now version of the Steam OS, which now means you could do it on all the handhelds or majority of them. You can put the Steam OS onto your handheld, which is probably what you want to do if you're currently rocking Windows or whatever on your handheld. Just throw that Steam OS on there. You'll thank me later. Because it's just completely goated, which you would expect, right? You talk about Steam and PC at their OS, you would expect it, right? But yeah, I'm glad they bailed out of it. I think there'll be another Xbox, but that'll be your last one. This next Xbox coming out is the last one. It's done after that. Finitoed.
Go ahead, that's it.
Because I think Microsoft is a software company.
That's right.
And I think they're going to want to go back to that. They're like, okay, we've done this whole hardware thing, not for us. Let's just go back to our software roots, which is what made them the juggernaut they are. Windows. Like, just go back to that. Be who you're meant to be. Don't be what you're not meant to be.
I do find it interesting that this news has come out that it's cancelled or sidelined or whatever you want to call it after the leak, because as far as I understand, the images or whatever of the prototype leaked, and I did think it was a very lack of effort there. Like, it basically just looked like the wrong ally with some
with an X button on it.
some Xbox tassels. Like, come on, like it was just the laziest effort. Like.
That's hysterical. Well, speaking of that, the great Slow-Mo has to throw a jab out there before he goes to the show. He says Singer sold his hentai body pillow to buy this Xbox handheld, and now it's not coming. Damn, no refund. So a little shout out to the Ash and Luca, by the way. A little Scumcast reunion right here with Slow-Mo and Death Singer. Great to have these guys on the show.
Yeah, I just feel bad for him. That's Singer's the homie, and he really loved that body pillow. And now it's just.
Hey, Slow-Mo, I mean, joke's on you. I have like 6.
I know he's gonna talk about my knees. I'm old. I get it. I know.
I get it.
No. I said I have 6.
Oh, he's got.
So what's one?
He has 6 pillows. He's
Come
fine,
on,
Slow-Mo.
You
Clearly,
have 6 good. I mean, that's a worse insult than the one. All right. You know what? Go ahead, bro. You got.
Hey, wait. Just excuse my ignorance. What is a hentai body pillow?
Nib, I like how you are one of the most intelligent people, and he always says, "What is that?" That's great. Go ahead, answer away, Death Singer, please.
I have no idea. It sounds.
Google. You should Google it. You should Google it.
Go ahead and Google it.
I'm gonna Google it right now.
All right,
I got a My Little Pony body pillow. Can I play?
Wise. Shout out to Warawana, who just also subscribed to the channel. Please, guys, hit that subscribe button. It means the world to me. Let me know how the audio is as well, guys. He says Xbox shelving the rumored Xbox handheld after almost a year of hype from a lot of the Xbox podcasts about the device is truly a donkey and carrot moment. I don't get that reference, but nonetheless, shout out to Warawana, and I appreciate subscribing to the channel. Wise, what do you think, Wise? Is this something that took you by surprise before we move on to the next subject?
No, not at all. This was never going to happen. Basically, I hate to say this. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Xbox is looking for a way of gracefully bowing out of this, all of this.
Yeah.
Okay. They don't want to pull away really fast because that's going to leave a whole lot of sour taste in people's mouths and everything like that. And I get that, right, from just a brand standpoint. But they are not. They've never had any intentions of making a sequel to the Series X, in the sense that they are not going to be. They're not trying to chase that power narrative. If you want to see what's going to happen to the Xbox, all you need to do is look at what's happening to Surface. Surface basically is the budget Windows variant. It's what gets you on the Windows platform in the most economical way possible. And that is what I think they're going to do with both their handheld and their hardware. It is like the bare minimum of what you really need to access the Xbox infrastructure, if you will. Now, and that's mainly because they are not going to be able to subsidize these games anymore. Back in the day, these consoles used to come out at $200, $300, $400 because they were lost leaders, because the companies subsidized those consoles, knowing that, okay, well, if you buy the console, you're going to buy their games, and then they're going to offset the price of the console based off the games. That is not happening anymore in Xbox's camp. So they are not going for the power narrative, because that's just going to be price prohibitive. If they made something akin to the Series X, or to that level of what I'm looking for, power in next gen for the Series X, that thing is going to be over $1,000, and they're not going to put $1,000 console on the market. Not like that. And same thing here. And the main thing is
that's a great point, Wise. And don't lose your train of thought. I just want to piggyback with what you just said, guys. What Wise is saying right now is, if they're not doing well right now with what they had respectively at a $499 console before the price hike, okay, the next generation consoles we've said are probably going to flirt somewhere between, and this is a whole other debate, and I don't want to get into it, but they could be anywhere from $600 to $800 moving on to. So if that's the case, and they didn't sell well at the $499, and let's not forget they had an Xbox Series S that everybody used to remind us every single week that played great Game Pass games as well, and that was at $299, and that didn't sell. Then how are they supposed to put up this fight with a piece of hardware in 2027 that could be anywhere from $600 to $800 to $900 and go against a competitor that also has their games on that platform? Go ahead, Wise. I just really think that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, and see that's what they're going to do. They're going to make a sequel to their hardware, but it's going to be a Series S sequel. They're going to leave the hardware, the high end, for like people like Lenovo or Asus or whoever else, because that is what they want to do. They don't want to be in the hardware. What part of they do not want to make an Xbox do people not understand? They do not want that. They've never wanted that to begin with, because it's always been a lost leader at best. They want out, and they've gotten a way out, and they're going to find every avenue to do it. So the fact that they dropped the idea of an in-house made handheld, I knew that they were going to do that to begin with. I thought that's what they were going to do when they first announced a handheld, that they're just going to make it like third-party OEM type of situation. So when they said they're going to go back and make it first-party again, I was taken aback, because that's not what my broker was telling me about what their internal thinking was. So this seems more in line with what's going on. And there's not going to be a Series X sequel. There will be a weaker console, but that's all they're going to offer.
Yeah, I'm going to ride along with what Wise just said there. And now, guys, I want to get to this. So does anybody else have anything else? I don't want to take the mic away from anybody. This was kind of late breaking news. I think we really kind of hit everything from the analytics to what Microsoft's past was with hardware, what we think they're going to do, how niche the handheld market is, and what the future lies. That's kind of our opinions. But I'm going to take this to another big topic that happened this past week. And it all kind of rides along these first few topics. And Daniel, I'm going to you on this because, and I'm not going to go ahead and just read your tweet on X verbatim. I'll let you speak for yourself. But Indiana Jones and Doom: The Dark Ages didn't have the greatest launch numbers for sales, right? I mean, they're estimated at 800K or something like that on console. I don't know if that was console and PC combined. Maybe you can clarify some of that. But what is the cause, in your opinion, of the lack of sales? What actually, because it's not that the games are necessarily bad. I didn't see a massive quality drop. I thought Indiana Jones was done very well. The mocap was great. The story was great. Music was great. Combat, definitely a minus there. But Doom is Doom, right? So is it just fatigue on Doom? Or is it Game Pass? What is it, Danielle, that you think that after reading and doing your homework on this that led you to that tweet that kind of caught fire the other day?
Yeah, so just a personal note first. I'm an all consoles gamer. I have a PS5. My main one that I play is the Series X, simply because of Game Pass. I'm a big user of Game Pass, and I have the Switch as well. So my statements on that tweet were never from a fanboy perspective or anything like that.
No, it was sales. It was just 90, sales, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying because like 90% of the comments of the replies come on that.
They hate him. They hate Daniel now. I can see all the comments, all the Xbox fans.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, but I always assume, half of these people are like 12 years old. The other half only have one console.
No, they're like 55.
Whatever.
Yeah, they're in their 50s. Don't fool yourself.
They're like 55 in their PJs, and they're throwing like daggers at a poster of you right now.
Well, there's a lot of illiteracy out there as well. But anyway, just to clarify that from my perspective. Now, when I said that, I was mostly focused. My point was not so much about Xbox, even Game Pass. I was mostly focused on the perspective from the publisher, from Bethesda, which is the publisher of those two games. And obviously we also had Oblivion, the remake, remaster, whatever they want to call it, recently. I did not mention that because that remake was made by Virtuous, so I think it's kind of a different. There's a different strategy there, just in terms of how it was produced and launched and everything. I just think from Microsoft's perspective, they have Bethesda, and they look at these two games that Bethesda published, and I know they're not developed by Bethesda themselves. It's machine games. Indiana, and then Eat for Doom. Both great games, by the way. But Microsoft looks at that and they see, okay, we have this company, Bethesda, under our ceiling, and they launch these two massive IPs. I mean, Doom is one of the biggest, historically speaking, one of the biggest IPs in the history of gaming, right? And then you have Indiana Jones, which, whatever way you want to look at it, you may say, okay, the last movies didn't do well, people don't care about it. It's like a Gen X or millennial at most kind of franchise, but it's still a massive IP, recognizable and everything. And both these games, presumably, they cost a lot of money to produce. They took years to produce. There's a lot of people working for them, a lot of salaries, a lot of paychecks. So they're big budget games. And they launch, and finally, of course, we had Indiana Jones launching first on the Xbox and then on the PS5, but let's just account for both launches. You look at that, and consumers basically ignored those games, both on Xbox, and I'm talking just sales-wise, both on PC, on Xbox, and on PS5. I mean, whatever way you want to see it, 300,000 on Steam, 800,000. I mean, we now live in a world where we have games being released that are free-to-play games that are playable on PC and consoles, cross-play, that are making like $1 billion a year. We have a lot of games like that, especially like from Chinese developers and stuff like that. So for a company like Microsoft to see these big AAA games coming out and basically being ignored by consumers in terms of sales, I mean, that has to like, you know, the bells must start, making some noise inside of the office from the executives side, the people who make decisions. Because again, like I mentioned earlier, these companies, they're looking at things, they're looking at their KPIs, they're looking quarterly, annually, and that's it. They need to meet those targets, and if they don't, then decisions get made. I mean, I'm speculating here, but this is generally how corporations work, and from my experience, and I think most people's experience who worked in big corporations understand this basic notion that unfortunately many people who are just fans and whatever don't always understand this kind of corporative realities. So that's really the issue. Now, people seem to assume that Microsoft, just because Microsoft is trying to grow Game Pass and is pushing Game Pass, that they would not care about sales. That's obviously, I mean, in my opinion, it's a very naive at best and very ignorant perspective, because of course Microsoft cares about sales. Otherwise, they would not be launching their games on PS5 and on PC as well. So that's important. That's not charity. They are a publisher. If we look just at Game Pass, those games, I mean, Doom with 2 million players or 2.2 million or whatever on Game Pass. I mean, how many Game Pass subscribers are there? 30 million, 40 million, like, right? Somewhere around there.
Somewhere in the 30 million, 35 million, I think that's being gracious.
Exactly. So even if we just look at Game Pass, I don't see how 2 million people having played the game is a success. Because that basically means that 2 million people installed the game and maybe played it for like 5 minutes. Like, that doesn't mean that people are like super engaged with the game. At least we don't know that. I would presume.
Know that.
So those numbers.
The achievement percentages are really quite poor across all these games. So
exactly.
I did a 14-minute video about it yesterday about the percentages of achievements on those games. But I'll get into that when I talk. But you go ahead.
Yeah, like I finished Indiana Jones, by the way, which I loved. It's 10 out of 10 for me game. And yeah, when I finished the game, it was exactly 14%. The achievement for finishing the game was 14% on the Xbox. So again, when we see these numbers, like Indiana Jones had 4 million players, when I look at, I don't see any positive on that. If I was like a higher up from the game division and Microsoft, I would be thinking, wait a minute, why isn't the game being played by at least 10 million people? Like, why aren't people curious to try the game? It's right there on Game Pass. They're paying for Game Pass. Why are people not installing the game? So that comes to my main point, which is I think it's a failure from the publishing side and from the marketing, from Bethesda, because they're the ones publishing the game, even though it's under Microsoft. But, you know, companies have their own strategy, even within Microsoft. They're not all being micromanaged, presumably at that level. So I think the failure is on the publishing side, specifically. And that's, you know, I don't have the answer for that. If I had, I would be working for them and they would be paying me to do better. But you know, like, it just didn't work. Like, I don't know if it's fatigue or whatever. For Indiana Jones, again, the first person thing, people keep mentioning that. Again, old IP. Some people don't care. Whatever. Doom. I don't know. Maybe there's some fatigue. I mean, I think Doom, even though it's very different, this one from the last two because of the shields and the titans and the dragon riding and whatever, I do feel like it still feels very similar to the last two. Even though it has all those differentiating factors, it still feels very similar. And I think some people are just kind of tired, and there's just so many games coming out, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Now, another thing I noticed on the comments on my tweet specifically, a lot of people bring up the price of the games and the fact that there are no physical editions. I mean, no actually like the game in the disc to be played
That's
offline.
right.
I think I understand. I sympathize with that because I'm a game collector. I spend a big portion of my income just buying used old games for my collection. But I also realize, and we need to be realistic, but most sales now are digital. I mean, in particular on Xbox and obviously on PC. Nobody's buying DVD games on PC. So these people that complain about the game not having this true physical edition, unfortunately, they are a very small niche. Like a very, very small niche. Even if their concerns are valid, and again, I sympathize with them, ultimately, I think they're of no consequence for the bottom line, for the sales.
Mm-hmm.
They account for maybe a small percentile of the sales. So that's not a factor really. That I think the publisher and Microsoft should need to be concerned when they're looking at how to solve this issue. But that's pretty much it. I mean, again, it's that number. When I see the 2 million players on Doom on Game Pass, people celebrate that, and in my mind, I'm thinking, are we living in crazy world? Like,
yes, we are.
Don't you guys see that this is extremely low for the amount of people actually paying for Game Pass? Like, why are people not playing this game?
Yeah.
Like, I presume this is what people who make decisions at Microsoft and at Xbox Game Division, this is the questions they're asking right now, and they're thinking, where is the growth? Like, where is the growth? How can we make this grow? Because it's not. I mean, yeah, we don't have the exact numbers on Game Pass subscriptions. If it would be growing a lot, they would be telling us, obviously. That's another funny thing, that people seem to take everything at face value that companies tell them. That they seem to follow public release, public statements, PR, as if that's news, as if that's the facts. When obviously we need third party, we need independent people to verify the data and verify the facts, and that's really where the information really comes from. But unfortunately, now we have this whole generation of people with this mindset. I mean, of fans and consumers who are really, I would say, kind of brainwashed, really, to assume that the news have to come from the actual corporations, which is, I think this is baffling. This is insane at best, and it's dangerous, because if we're waiting for corporations to tell us, quote unquote,
Daniel,
the truth, then
Daniel, I can't agree with you more. And the reason I say that is I always used to make this joke back in the day. Is I remember a few people that used to have restaurants that open, and Nib might get a kick out of this. They had restaurants, and I could clearly see they weren't doing well. Whenever you walked up and say, "How's it doing?" When you ask somebody how they're doing, they're like, "I'm doing great. I mean, things great. What, you want to come in for a table, Daniel? We got a table over here for you. Everything's. Well, I drove by last Saturday. I didn't see a lot of people. Oh, they came later on. Everything's great. 2-3 months later, they're not open. So, like you said, when you're relying on the actual owner, what do you think? What restaurant owner would you ever walk in on, and you're like, "How are things going?" They're like, "Horrible, man." Absolutely horrible. The cook left. I can't get a wait staff. You guys want to eat here? You're like, no, I don't want to eat here. So, of course, they're always going to promote it. And then you have this entire, brass that's just kind of pushing it in the media. And it's like you say, 2 million people. 2 million people hit the A button and started the game. That doesn't tell me a lot. What about the engagement? Did people stay locked in? Is the game that great? Are people sticking around? Shout out to... Ranting Greek Gamer, shout out to RGG. He says, Mooch, I have a better answer to the question. He says, people buying Game Pass subscriptions for a month, playing Doom, finishing it, and then they move on to the next game. That's why it didn't make sales. That's okay if you want to say for the Xbox platform, but the PC numbers for Doom and the PlayStation 5 numbers for Doom, which released day and date, weren't great. They weren't great.
No, they're horrible. They're horrible.
Might I suggest that Doom didn't sell well because Doom hasn't sold well for the past two as well? I mean, I'm not saying that anything that Daniel was saying is inaccurate. It's just that this ain't really that, and Indiana Jones, not really the IPs that I would expect to sell well. Now, I didn't play Indiana Jones. I saw the gameplay and I said, that's not for me. But I mean, I do know that like that IP is old as dirt, and the movies don't do great. And this is not like a long running like IP that sells a lot in games. So I wasn't surprised that didn't sell great. Doom 2016 only sold like 3 million, and Doom Eternal, the last time we got like anything official from that, it was like 3 million digital. But
that was
like
after 2 weeks though. So
yeah, exactly. So yeah, it could be higher. You know, it could be significantly higher, but we don't have any like official data on it. I'm just not like really shocked. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, but this is still a big drop below Eternal, because Eternal was 3 million digital in 2 weeks. This is 800K in 1 week. But in 2016, the physical split was much higher than it is today. So I mean, I don't know. You can estimate whatever you want. Let's just say 30% physical, right? For the hell of it, that would be 3.9 million in 2 weeks versus 800K in 1 week. So that potentially is a significant drop off. And then we had another estimate several months later, which put Eternal at 7.5 million, I believe. So I would say, yeah, either way.
I looked into that just now, and that they made a lot of guesses to get the 7.5 million. There was a whole lot of guesses that were based off of just a former id Software guy saying what the revenue was after 9 months, and that was like in his LinkedIn. So it's I get what you're saying. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually looked into that, but I actually think the 7.5, me personally, if I was doing the assessment, I actually think that's too conservative, because they've essentially, what they've done is id themselves said 450 million revenue, and they've just divided it between 60. But the thing is, they don't get $60, and I don't know why people keep making this mistake.
There's price drops, all kinds of stuff like that.
Well, not just price drops, but the publisher. Remember, the platforms get a 30% cut, so they're probably left with $42 on a full price game, and not every sale is a full price. And then, but to compensate for that, you have special editions as well. But even if I was really, really conservative, or shall I say liberal, and I put the estimate at $50, I actually think the average is probably much less than that. But if we were to say $50, that's actually 9 million copies sold. So I actually think the 7.5 million is probably underestimating how much it sold. And if you do the cadence, if it did, say 3.9 million in 2 weeks, including physical, that's just an estimate. The 9 million does make sense over the period of time that it was assessed from. So, it does kind of line up, I think. But then I can't see Doom Dark Ages doing anywhere close to that. And I will add, just like because these a lot of the fanboys like come at you for just telling facts and data. But I also enjoyed Doom the Dark Ages. I gave it an 8, and Indiana Jones I gave a 9. I really enjoyed Indiana Jones. So it is disappointing that these games have sold so poorly. I think Indiana Jones was 117K sold on PS4 at its launch, and 97K on Steam, and they didn't even bother listing Xbox. I assume the sales were, quite tragic. And in its debut month in Sakana, it was like ranked 14 and then dropped off the following month. So, and just for further context, these aren't cheap to make games. Like Indiana Jones has 2,505 people credited to its development, not including special thanks and general thanks, over multiple years of development. And Doom the Dark Ages has roughly, I can't remember the exact number, but it's close to 1,500, again, over multiple years of development. So these are like very, very big and expensive projects. So for them to kind of do the numbers they are, it is probably a little bit concerning. And then to compound that even more, while I think the last quarterly results of Xbox were good in the sense that at least there was some more revenue increase, I think largely down to Minecraft, because the movie tie-in worked really well.
Yes.
And they did very well on that. It's been all over the charts, Minecraft, recently. But on the negative side of things, Call of Duty now, across all their products, has a lower engagement and player numbers now than the previous installment and the previous 2 installments, I believe. So that is really bad, considering at launch it was by far the highest engagement of any Call of Duty, partly down to Game Pass. But it kind of almost feels like, even with their popular games, people try temporarily and then just it fades away. Like, how is it possible that Call of Duty Black Ops 6, which sold better than Modern Warfare 3, now has a lower player number, including Warzone and everything?
I think as a Call of Duty player, I could tell you there's a lot of discontent with how things have been progressing.
Absolutely.
As far as battle passes go.
Yes.
And in Modern Warfare 3, I had a whole lot more fun. And even though I like Omni movement and I like the movement and gameplay of Black Ops 6 more than Modern Warfare 3 and 2, I just I look at the battle pass and I'm just like, yeah, there's just a lot of nothing here. There may be like 1 or 2 weapons in it that I might like, oh, okay, if I get to page 6, I can unlock this and maybe level it up. But then I don't even know if I like that weapon or not. There's no other skins in there that I really want to engage with.
That's right.
And then there's consistently, like today, they're testing weird stuff out. Like they want to hide the levels of the opposing player now. I'm like,
that is absolute BS. And not only that, they're also doing a mid season, if you will, game battle pass inside the battle pass now for 1100 CP.
It's battle pass inception. It's just like
what
are we doing here?
It's
like
crazy.
I pay for a battle pass. Now I gotta spend even more money for like the good stuff.
For the good stuff that comes out in the middle,
man, I'm good.
It's crazy.
I haven't played in like 2 or 3 weeks, honestly, Mooch.
Well,
it's been a minute.
I'll tell you, man, I've been playing too much of it. I do enjoy the rush of Battle Royale still gets me. I'm always hoping for another company to come out there and do a Battle Royale better, but I haven't really found one yet. I know a lot of people would say Apex, but Apex isn't my jam, really, so I've been stuck with Warzone.
You ever play Fortnite, Mooch?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I play.
Yeah, like Fortnite Zero Build is my jam, and the Battle Pass is... most of the time it's on point. Like the current Star Wars one, there's some good skins. You got
they change up the meta a lot. Like it plays completely different from season to season, which is good.
Yeah.
They keep it fresh.
They change the map as well, and they put all things in because now they're doing the Star Wars thing. They have like lightsabers you can have, which change up the gameplay.
My only gripe when it comes to Fortnite that I keep saying all the time is it feels like you'll get an encounter right away with another team, and then it's a lot of waiting. I'm with a squad. We're out there just waiting, and then the last 5-10 minutes is action again, but you're just kind of all over the place, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot. Whereas in Warzone, it is much more frequent, especially if you watch the gameplay. Like, shout out to Echo, JV, and James. Like, when we play, we don't sit still, we don't camp, we run. We get bounties, we go out there, we're constantly hunting. So it's like we're on the move the whole time. I wish they would kind of put a little bit of that, instigate people to want to go look for other groups in Fortnite. And if that stuff's out there, I don't play it as much as I play Warzone, but that's the kind of stuff I think it's missing. Fortnite does other things better than Warzone, but that's one of the things I wish that they would institute into Fortnite to get the game progressively moving, making you want to go and hunt down another team and vice versa. So that's the only thing I don't see from Fortnite, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily worse or better. It depends on the gamer. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I always get into a firefight. Like, I don't think there's ever a time. The only time I've never actually seen someone was, especially in solo. Like, I come across people all the time. Like, I land, run around. You have a firefight with like 5 dudes, and then you're like, okay, let me go over here, and then you start moving, and you just come across people all the time. So, unless that's just your experience where you haven't really run into people. But like, I sometimes I just want to break. I want to stop running into people because there'll be a TIE fighter going above me, start trying to shoot me up. There'll be like a car zooming across, trying to ram me, and I'm like, "Yo, just leave me alone, guys. I just want to do this quest real quick."
Shout out to T-Rock. He goes, Mooch, ADHD confirmed. Shout out to T-Rock. Great to have him here. Shout out to also Danelle Brown. Guys, usually my super chats stay over on the OBS screen for me. They're not today, so OBS is doing its thing improperly. So let me just read these. I don't want them to go down. Shout out to the great Danelle Brown. He says, "Hey, Mooch, how you doing? How are you? Are you good? He's checking on me because of the Knicks games. He goes, I know you will never invite me. You already know you can always come on the show anytime you want. He goes, cracks a smile. I'm sorry. He goes, but I have to ask. How about those New York Knicks? Someone said New York in 5. He goes, there's room for you on the. He says on the couch. I think he means on the bench. I can help them on the bench. Babor Country also comes in. He says Doom was never a big seller. PC gamers are just loud. Babor, I don't agree with that because Nib was saying it a few moments ago when he threw some numbers out there that. I do believe that prior Dooms did decent. I'm not sitting here saying they did, they didn't do GTA numbers. I'm just saying it did decent. Mag, listen, I know you're chomping at the bit, Mag. You got some data here. I mean, what do you think when it comes down to it? Because I understand we were saying this on the show, somewhat of a joke, but not really. Like Indiana Jones was our generation. I don't know how many people in the 2 generations younger than us are like, oh my God, Indiana Jones, finally. That's what, embarked on that. And again, just to kind of piggyback with what Daniel was saying and also Slow-Mo Nib, I'll kind of ride down the middle with them. I'll say, listen, Doom is Doom. Doom did very well. Everyone that I know that played it, I've played about 2-3 hours of it. I've done the first 2 levels of it. I'm enjoying it, but it's Doom, right? So is it Doom fatigue? I don't know.
I do need to run. I just wanted to let you know. I appreciate
all right,
the invite.
Hey, Slow-Mo, thank you.
Get up out of here.
I appreciate you, Slow-Mo. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your show, of course.
And we'll definitely direct everybody over to DPS as soon as the show's over. Thank you, Slow-Mo.
Appreciate you. Peace
Appreciate
out,
it. So what do you think, Mag? What do you got to add to this? Because maybe you could put a little insight on this for us.
Now, I talked to people at Netflix and at Paramount Plus. The hell's it called? Amazon.
Yes.
So we deal with that, and I've talked about how their metrics work. Now, I'm not saying that this is how Game Pass metrics work, but this is how they work. What they do is when you get, like, for example, let's say you get into a Netflix show and you're like, he gets into season 3, he gets into season 4, and then all of a sudden they just randomly cancel it, even though it was amazing, the great reviews, it was critically acclaimed, the people loved it, and then you're like, why did they cancel it? Why? Is because their metric is based on how many new subscribers they get during the release window of that show. So that's 90 days is the release window. That's what they call it, right? So what ends up happening is, let's say, I don't know, we'll just pick up Ozark season 4, okay? And so what they do is between, let's say, Ozark season 4, within 90 days of that show, or even Reacher season 3, whatever the hell you want to talk about, within that 90 days, even if it's not directly related to that show, even though they know, but the thing is they work on new subscribers based on new content. And then from there, there's a second metric of how many of those new subscribers are checking out the show that they just launched. From there, that's how they measure their success in terms of moving the product forward, or they decide to halt it and do something else to try and entice more people to come in. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because on the other side of the fence, when you're looking at Xbox Game Pass, we have no actual idea. Well, we have a basic idea of how many people are in there, but what's happening is the people are not engaging enough. And so what's it called? Daniel was talking about a little bit earlier, and I had the number right here. He was talking about Indiana Jones and everything else. And now what ends up happening is if you get, like, let's say, 2 million people checked out this game, 3 million, that's still, even on the Doom side of thing, that's 7.4% of people play Doom. So that means that 92.3% of people did not even touch the game. And these are people that are like actual supposed to be Game Pass subscribers, not the core, whatever the hell they call it, just the online. Not those people included. I'm talking about the actual Game Pass Ultimate subscribers. Only 7.4%, not 7.3. So you look at something like that and you're like, well, that is not even a 10% engagement rate for the game. And then when you get through the game, now you've got 7% of people, or 7.4% of the people playing the game. Then you only had 11.15 people actually finish the game. So you see what I'm saying? So from a 7.4, you actually only have 11% of that 7% even got to the end of the game. You see what I mean? You see the number getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And as it stands right now, for example, I'm going to pull up an old one from a couple years ago. A lot of people could say, well, Mag, you know what? The game is still new. It just came out a few weeks ago, whatever, blah, blah. Okay, fine. But the other games that are looking at, like Indiana Jones, 11.48% completed the game. Hi-Fi Rush, only 8% of people finished the game. Right? So you're looking at these numbers. I'm like, what is going on here? However, I did notice an increasing trend lately. Some of the earlier achievements, like, for example, like South of Midnight, only 7% got to level 3. Right? And then I'm looking at it now, 33.8% got to level 3. So more people are engaging in some of those games.
That's right.
I guess as it takes time or whatever else. But the thing is, is this a measure of success? I do not like this metric. I do not like when they say numbers. I think that these are numbers that they utilize for. They don't utilize this for fanboys. They utilize this for investors. So when they splash 4 million people put their eyeballs on the tile, you know what I mean? Like what does that even mean when they say 2 million people engaged? But if 2 million people engaged, only 7% of people actually looked at it. And then when you get to that, like I said, even a smaller percentage actually is playing the game.
That's right.
So in that respect, the only metric that we could use that actually makes sense to us is actual sales of the games. The game is not doesn't seem to be selling incredibly well. I hear Microsoft, and there's a lot of talking heads out there. Colt and I are going to argue about this on Monday because he was saying, like he said it on Twitter today, saying, "Well, they say it's successful, so it must be successful." I disagree.
Matt, let me ask you a question.
I don't believe them. Sorry,
Matt,
I don't believe Microsoft. What's up?
Let me ask you a question. Have you heard through your own scuttlebutt, which I'm hearing a little bit, that there are people in the higher echelons thinking about walking back the entire day and date first party IP?
I've heard that from a few people, but not from credible people.
So wait, what was the question? What was the question? Can you repeat that again, Wise?
Yeah. So from what I'm hearing is that there are people higher up in Microsoft who are thinking about walking back day and date.
Oh, you know who said that a long time ago, Wise? Me. Go ahead.
So when I said not credible people, I wasn't talking about Mooch.
No, that's okay. No, because I
gotta walk back.
I said it back in 2021. Go ahead. This is definitely who Wise was saying.
I think that the PR disaster around that would be beyond words. However, I did hear that they are going to increase the price of Game Pass yet again. So what they do is, this is typical of most corporations, that if they do not get the numbers to grow, they charge more for the numbers that are there.
Well, see, that's what I'm hearing too. I'm hearing that they're going to make another tier that is day and date, and that's going to be much, much more expensive than what you're paying currently.
I didn't hear it was an extra tier, but I did hear they were going to be charging more for it. Where it gets to the point where I think that with the number of games that you play, if you play every game that comes out in Game Pass, like Daniel said, he really enjoys the product. Great, go ahead, do whatever. Me, on the other hand, I'm a little bit more picky with it, where I'm like, well, you know what? I'm not playing this. I didn't play Avowed. I wasn't interested, even though I like RPGs and stuff. That did not appeal to me. But some of the other games they did, I would actually probably at that point, if they raise the price even further, I'll just buy the game.
I'm hearing $24.99.
And I don't think anybody at Microsoft cares.
I'm hearing numbers about $24.99, $25.
Yes, $5 increase is what I heard is going to be the next year. Now the thing is, at that point, why not just buy it? I mean, if the game is going to be worth, like for example, let's say Fable's a huge hit, right? And whatever, it's going to be an amazing game. It's a 9 out of 10. It's on a Game of the Year list. This and that. I'll just buy it, right?
But that's what they want you to do, though. That's what they want.
Well, I don't think they give a shit where you do it, because I don't think they care about it. I think at this point it's just about money. They don't really care. Exactly. And then like if they get 70% from PlayStation and 30% goes to PlayStation, both companies are happy. You know what I mean? Like 84% of people bought Call of Duty Black Ops 6 on PlayStation. Sony got 30% of that for doing absolutely nothing because they didn't even have the marketing rights, and they still raked in billions of dollars, right? So it's a symbiont circle where they're all making a ton of money. Now, the Doom thing, I do have a little bit of a theory. I finished it 1.5 times because I'm doing my marinated review on it. I do these reviews where I play it and then I sit on it for a couple of weeks, almost a month, like Angry Joe does. Angry Joe doesn't release a review till a month later. He sits on it, right? So I'm doing the same thing. I should have the review done by this weekend. I'm not doing the rat race to be the first to review. I don't care about that shit. Go, you guys fight over that stuff. The other guys, I'm not doing that. The thing is, I actually found it to be a competent game. I just didn't find it overwhelmingly good. I found it a little boring after a while. When you start hitting like level 12, 13, there's 22 levels in there. I start falling asleep while I'm playing it. Yeah, I'm just like, this is just mundane, and I'm getting to the point now where my score is going down. I'm not going to get into it because I haven't given my final score, but the score is creeping down in a negative direction, and I think that it's going to be one of those ones that for me it's the weakest of the trilogy, and I'm looking at it. So maybe that's a factor too. There's a lot of factors in there. There's the Game Pass factor. There's the accessibility factor where you could get it for, some people said it here on the panel, if you got a PC, $10. Yeah. Right? If you have an Xbox or a dongle or whatever the hell, you can get it for $20, right? US. These are US dollars. Then you look at something like that. Then you look at that the game it's still ranked about the same as 2016 in the Metacritic, around 84, 85. And I'm like, all right, whatever. But for me, and I noticed a lot of the gamers, the user scores are actually lower. So I'm looking at that, and I'm like, all right, well, people aren't enjoying it as much. Music sucks, by the way. I mean, that's not to sell the game. I'm just mentioning that. So you think about that, and then you start thinking about price points, and then you start thinking about all the games that are out right now. The competition is fierce. Your game has to stand out leagues beyond what's already out there or what's coming up, right? Because people are going to have to be very picky and choosy with their dollars these days as things begin to increase, and they increase even more. For example, if the games go up to $80, as we already know they will, with Borderlands 4 presumably, and of course Call of Duty this year will be $80. They already officially said that, which is going to be about a month later. That's costing me $125 Canadian now.
Yeah.
So I'm getting real picky and choosy about what I'm buying, right? And I was going to buy Doom on the PS5 Pro to stream it. I didn't. I decided not to because I played it on Game Pass and I said, this is not worth $100 or $110. I said, this is not worth $110. So I'm walking. So have to be
Mag, I got to agree with you, boy. We got the same story, not just the same voice. You know, the thing about it is I same thing. A lot of people say, well, people play it on Game Pass and then they buy it. I actually played the first 2 levels of it to see if I wanted to buy it on PS5 Pro, and I'm like, no. If I do, I'll just finish it on Game Pass. Like, it didn't rope me in. Not a bad game. I really don't have a lot of critiques. It's just it was it's all right. It's not a bad game.
It's a competent game. It's well made. It looks good. It plays well. The frames are great. All that kind of stuff.
Just doesn't rope you in.
I even did a test on a Series S because I still got a Series S in this house just to fart around.
How'd that go?
I'm like, let me see what it looks like. Actually, it worked out flawlessly. It played.
That's
fine.
great.
But was it worth $110 for me to buy it on my Pro? No. So I did not bother pulling the trigger on that. In fact, funny enough, like I'm looking at like Death Stranding 2, and I'm like, well, I'll save that $110 for Death Stranding 2.
Absolutely.
Right? And then, of course, it's driving me nuts. Chat, you got to tell me if you guys are on the fence about this thing. But I mean, Mooch was showing a footage of it earlier. I mean, this Mind's Eye, is this even a real thing? I'm so intrigued.
I don't know.
I think I might buy this.
Yeah, I think it is.
And I'm going to stream this.
Yeah, it's not that good.
I'm very excited.
Before we move on to that, though, I did want to just
Captain Chats, what's up, buddy? Sorry.
Yeah. So I was going to say, on this like a ZeniMax Bethesda thing, it's real interesting because the 2 products that I would say that have done well, at least in terms of the data that we have, the sales and stuff, it seems to be like old Fallout stuff because of the Fallout show had quite a significant bump in the charts at for a period of time.
Fallout was also $7.
Yeah, $7. Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? So when those sales went to the roof, I'm like, well, $7 is a pack of 2 packs of gum.
No, but remember, Sakana is revenue based. So for it to chart in the top 5 is actually quite significant, even when it's cheaper, even more so, because it means it actually had to push a hell of a lot more units to sort of compete with the rest of the games that are a higher dollar amount. And then also Oblivion Remaster, I believe, is done pretty well. I think, if I remember correctly, it charted very high, but it's actually already the 3rd highest selling game of the year in the United States, at least. Behind number 1 is Monster Hunter Wilds, and number 2 is Assassin's Creed Shadows. But it's kind of a bit disappointing for me because I've actually enjoyed a lot of the games. But if you look at ZeniMax's output outside of those kind of, let's just say, the evergreen titles, Deathloop did okay, did reasonably, but not amazing, even though it had very good reception and it even was a Game of the Year nominee. I know it was PlayStation timed exclusive. Ghostwire Tokyo did poorly. I know there's some contention about how well Hi-Fi Rush did because Aaron Greenberg was trying to say it did well, but obviously it didn't, considering they closed the studio. And then you Pentiment, and you have other titles. Now you have Doom, and then you have there was another title they did as well. But anyway, basically across the board, everything outside the evergreen titles has really not fared very well. And Daniel made a point earlier. maybe a lot of it is down to a combination of Bethesda and Microsoft marketing and publishing. Maybe they're just not doing a good job pushing these games, because these aren't actually, that they're getting good reviews. Like Indiana Jones got really good reviews, Deathloop got really good reviews, and I understand some of them have been real bad flops, like Redfall, for which Arcane, the secondary Arcane studio, was shuttered as well. But I would say there is a risk factor here, because Xbox has shown that they are willing to cut jobs quite significantly in ZeniMax, and even close studios. They've closed multiple studios already. So they can't keep having these like sort of higher budget games that don't do the numbers that they do or have significant Game Pass growth, because these are not cheap investments. So, which does disappoint me, because I've actually enjoyed these games, at least Deathloop, Indiana, and Dark Ages. Like, I thought all three were great. Hi-Fi Rush, I think, is one of the best games out of Xbox in many years. And they bloody closed the studio down. I feel like I'm cursed at this point.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
wild, isn't it? Yeah.
It's wild. Literally, the games that I enjoy the most that come out of Microsoft, they seem to lose. Like Ori, I also was a huge fan of, and then the Thomas Mahler thing like fell apart, and then they lost that as well, and he's doing his own thing elsewhere now. And then Hi-Fi Rush, they closed the studio. I'm like, what is going on? It's like, maybe I should just but yeah, across the board. So there is some kind of, like, I would say, impending negativity or financial potential struggles ahead for Bethesda ZeniMax, because if they can't get the publishing side and the marketing side into gear, and these sort of well-received higher budget tentpole titles can't start picking up steam and sales, I think there could be more turbulence ahead.
That's an interesting point, to be honest with you. We don't really talk about that. Microsoft's not scared of closing things or canceling things. We've seen that. We've seen that with Mixer. We've now seen it with the handheld. Who knows what they'll do with future studios if they're not outputting. One of the ones that I'm always concerned about a bit more, and I think they're going to give them one more shot out there, is Ninja Theory. Ninja Theory's Hellblade 2 didn't do very well. I don't expect it to do I know it was announced a week or two ago that Hellblade 2 will be coming to PS5. That's not going to move a lot of numbers. I mean, Daniel, if you're watching those numbers and keeping your ear to the ground, I don't think you're going to see any significance there either. Let me ask the great Death Singer here for a second. Death Singer, I'm going to kind of parlay this. Not that you can't answer the question that's at hand if you want to about Indiana Jones and Doom, but we're talking about Game Pass a lot here. And former Sony executive Shuhei Yoshida says, I believe the way Sony approached subscriptions is healthier. And that's how he's very politely saying, and Sony's said this a number of times. They've asked the Sony executives many times during press briefings, do you ever see yourselves doing a day-and-date subscription basis? Like we say, never speak in absolutes, never say never. But at this point in time, they just don't see that model working. Nintendo doesn't really seem to be going that way. Sony doesn't seem to be going that way. And I think even though Wise Old Gamer said that, he's heard it through the grapevine, and Mag kind of concurred that he heard it, but not from reliable sources, that Microsoft really wishes that they probably did, like what I used to say, 6 months. Like, think about how great that is. There's games that are diehard. You have to play on Xbox. You go buy the game. You buy it on that system. And then if you're like, I'm on the fence, so what? I'm paying $20 a month. I'll play it in 6 months when it comes to Game Pass. That's probably what they should have done. I said that it gives a relevance for the console. So, Death Singer, what do you think about Yoshida's latest comments? He's, again, very, very kind, polite way of saying, I think Game Pass is probably not the right model. Death Singer, we're calling out to you. He is in Wales.
He's currently fondling his hen toy.
I was going to say, see, with his hen toy, yes, absolutely. That's okay. Well, that's excusable. There you go. He's fine. That's Nib. Nib, you had to come in with that. But what do you think, Nib? Was that something? And then I want to hear Daniel's point of view on it too. Yeah, what do you think about Yoshida's comments?
Yeah, so I saw a lot of discussion about that. I saw some disingenuous conversation around it. I went back and read the whole thing and listened to the whole thing. Read. And then it does seem like he was talking more about the future perspective of what this model could lead to, as opposed to necessarily immediately right now. And there is also some things that maybe not everyone knows about, but like came through the FTC leaks, for example. One of those being that Xbox. I'll just read it so as to not get it wrong. 1 second. Yeah, I can't do both at the same time. It'll cut the audio, but yeah, it always happens all the time whenever I load another app. But yeah, essentially, in the FTC case, one of the things that was reported was that Microsoft actually has a history of doing exclusivity deals with Game Pass on games that they push day date, meaning that if they pay for a game to go on Game Pass day date,
I
the
don't know.
word yeah, the exact word was used was often. They often lock the exclusivity away from other subscription services. So while they do not do exclusivity deals as often on the console side with general releases, they were privy to it on the subscription side. And in the actual literature as well, the release, it also said that Sony does not do it nearly as typically. They said Sony does not typically do this, though they have done it in the past as well. But I did find that was quite interesting. So behind the scenes, we know that basically Game Pass for many years, I don't know about today, but for many years it was the golden goose that they're putting all their sort of eggs into. So it does make sense that they would be sort of exhausting more of their ability and funding or whatever to secure exclusives on that side. So that's one thing. The other thing is, when Shuhei, he says it's dangerous. I think he mentioned something about it taking control away from the developers and too much towards the platform holder. I've spoken about this before, but I don't think sometimes people think long term, and they also don't look at the impacts of this kind of thing of subscription services in other mediums, like audio, sound, music, TV, and everything. A lot of creators constantly talk about the ills and how it's changed the dynamics of what gets produced and what gets funded, and et cetera, because it's more about volume and just pushing stuff out than it is about quality or investing the right money. But to Yoshida's point about how it could be dangerous, and I made a tweet about this, and I'll just reiterate, try and do it quickly. The thing is, if there was a future where subscription services were the de facto delivery system of gaming, right? Let's just say the vast majority of consumers, they played their games on a subscription service and they no longer purchased their games. Very few people purchase their games. At that point, they may even stop releasing the games completely and have subscription exclusivity, which is what Shuhei Yoshida spoke about, right? In this future, he's talking about. Now, what happens when a subscription service has become a de facto delivery system? How many games are actually on a subscription service versus how many games get developed and produced or are in development, right? Thousands of games get made and released, whereas only a few hundred are on a subscription service and need to be on a subscription service for viability and profitability, right? These brands aren't going to pay for thousands of games to be on the subscription service because they don't need to. They're going to do the bare minimum that retains people on the subscription, right? So then if you have a situation where the only way that you can find success is to be on a subscription, but only a few hundred games are on the subscription, what happens to the thousands of developers and games that are producing games but can't get on the subscription? Well, they fail, they die. The other thing is, it puts the more of control and potential exploitative means to the platform holder, because then all these games and developers and whatever are vying to get on the subscription. So not only can they be more, and if they don't get on the subscription service, they will essentially die and fail. Their game will fail because nobody's buying games anymore.
Right.
It has to be on the subscription service.
That's
and at that
interesting.
point, they can be. Yeah, and at that point, they can be one more exploitative with the licensing fee that they give out, because they know unless the developer's game is on a subscription, they're done for.
They're done
right?
for.
So they can muscle them, and two, they can even start dictating the type and style of game that is on the service and that gets made. It's like, we want this type of game. If you're not making that, we're not interested in it for a subscription. Especially if they already have first-party titles that cover other, genre holes. Like we've already got this that does that, so we don't want that from you. So unless you do this, we're not gonna put you on Game Pass. So that's what I think he means by taking control away from the developers and potentially being dangerous, because in a all subscription future, that is basically what's going to happen, and it will massively impact creativity and developers and whatever, just like it has in movie streaming and everything now. Matt Damon the other day was talking about it. He was saying, like, they literally can't make the type of films that they used to and that they want to because of the financial dynamics at play now. Whereas before you had cinema, then you had DVD and Blu-ray release and everything else to have longer term revenue. Now it's like streaming, and how many people can you get exposed to it in a short window of time? Otherwise, they're not interested. So yes, these same pitfalls could very much impact if subscription gaming takes off in that way. And I think Shuhei's probably right, like not having day-date games and still having sort of a massive focus on sales and everything else probably is the better balance to sustain this than what Microsoft is going with.
That's interesting, too, what you said. And Detzinger's back, everybody. Detzinger, we'll go to you right now, and then I want to hear Daniel's point on this. But, that's an interesting point, and we did hear things like that back in the day. Now, we don't bring that up on a week-to-week basis, but we probably should bring it up more often, Nib. Like you said, if you're not allowed into Game Pass, for whatever that reason is, and I use the words allowed, you didn't make the criteria, you didn't make the cut, whatever it may be, you didn't do what Microsoft is asking for that particular game. Well, I don't know what that situation would be. Your game on Xbox will probably not do very well. It will not do very well.
Yeah, and that's already happening.
And when you look at games like Wukong, right, which were probably that they're not on Xbox, and maybe that's not a good example, but there's a lot of other games that are now choosing to skip that platform, and they're not electing to go on Game Pass or not being allowed on Game Pass, whatever the case may be going on behind the scenes. Detzinger, what I had asked you, and then Nib filled in, was basically what your thoughts were on Yoshida's belief that this.
Before you ask
go ahead,
question, I just want to clarify one sentence because I know people come at me. I have been a user of Game Pass since it launched, right? And people are going to say, "Oh, you're a hypocrite. You use Game Pass." I will say the reason I'm not as negative on it right now necessarily, and I do use it, is because it is still a tertiary or secondary delivery system. And I very much buy the vast majority of my games. It's just on the Xbox side, I use Game Pass. So we are not at that stage yet where everything is Game Pass only or subscription only. So, this is longer term. If it ever gets to that stage,
right,
I'll reconsider.
Right. Yeah. We're using certain examples here, but it is correct. That is a future state. Detzinger, what's your thoughts on Yoshida's? I believe the way Sony approached subscriptions is healthier, kind of alluding to the way PS Plus is run versus Game Pass.
It's whatever works for you, but in his hypothetical scenario, yes, it is really dangerous if the gaming industry moves into a nothing but subscription services. And to be honest, who knows in 20 years where we might be? We might be in that future. I personally lean against probably not. I think you'd have a universal box or something like PC. Essentially, because you could basically play everyone's games on PC, and I think you'll just get to the point where PC would probably be a de facto system or something. Because PC will always be around; it'll never go away. And so I could see something like that. But he's right; it would be really dangerous because it can lead to that. Currently, we're not seeing that because Game Pass is literally just a secondary delivery method. You could still buy your games outright. You don't have to use Game Pass.
Right.
So it's not really an issue now. In 20 years, who knows? This is a very hypothetical question.
It is.
And statement from him more so than it has any relevance now.
Well, Detzinger, Detzinger, the only thing I'll interrupt you real quick is don't get me wrong. I'll even ride along with you right now. But we've been saying this since 2017. It's like, well, we don't have enough data or we don't have enough of this. I mean, Game Pass is not a spring chicken. It's been out for a while now. We know what the numbers are doing, what they're kind of doing. They see it teeters up for a little while, then it drops. Detzinger, you said it yourself, by the way. I think as a consumer, outstanding on your part. You're like, I'll get Ubisoft Plus. I'll play the game. I'll beat the game. I drop Ubisoft. I get it for a month. That I understand that point. So there's those types of customers out there well enough now. But when you see the relationships and the way certain games are avoiding Xbox now and doing things to go around it, I'm not saying that we're at that point. I agree. That's a future tense. But we're starting to see light. And when you have somebody like Yoshida, who's been in the business for a very long time, has said this, and I'm paraphrasing, so I'm not going to put words in anyone's mouth, but the great Sean Layden actually said this many times too, as well, about his fear of what subscription services are. These are people that have been in the business for a very, very long time. They could have very easily just followed suit and probably done well. Maybe they would have done well. Who knows? But to be honest with you, they've done their homework and they're seeing that doesn't work. And my third part, that singer, that I would say to you that I don't think it necessarily is the future tense, is because Microsoft's decided to sell their games. They want to sell their games. This subscription thing, I really don't think that I think in their heart of hearts they wish they could walk it back. I don't know if they can, but they want to sell their games. So they're like, we can't sell them on Xbox because everyone's on Game Pass. We'll sell them on PC. We'll sell them on PlayStation. We'll sell them on Nintendo.
But then to your point, it's like Game Pass isn't working. So this hypothetical future that Yoshida's talking about, if subscription isn't taken off, like you don't see Ubisoft talk about Ubisoft Plus, you don't see EA talk about Origin, and like never. They just show you their games, and then in a little small print, day one on Origin. Like, and those are only niche systems because they're only available to PC. They're not available on consoles. So it's like, okay, so they're not really going to talk about that. No one really cares about subscriptions anymore. Mm-hmm. Game Pass is not doing what it's supposed to do. So I just don't think the hypothetical argument that he's putting forward, it's not relevant for now because clearly subscription ain't doing shit. People just want to buy and play their games. Now, in the next 20 years, could his statement become a reality? Possibly, but
right.
I don't think it is. So what he's saying is, yes, it is potentially dangerous in this hypothetical scenario, but it's not now.
So, all right. So, and that's great. So, Daniel, what do you think, Daniel? You've kind of heard everyone's points here so far. What do you think when I know you said you've been very verbal about you enjoy Game Pass, you use Game Pass frequently, but like I was just having a conversation with Cobra Kai in the chat here. He says, legit criticizing Xbox for a reality that doesn't exist yet. Cobra Kai, what we're saying is maybe the detriment that Yoshida's talking about isn't there yet, but the signs are there. So Daniel, what do you think at the end of the day when it comes down to it? Is Game Pass, is it what Xbox originally thought it was? Does Yoshida does he have a stance in the sand here?
No, so a few different points. Just from a consumer perspective.
Yes.
In my personal opinion, I think the PlayStation, their subscription service is a mess in terms of messaging to the consumer. It's very convoluted. It's hard to understand exactly what tier does what and what's the pros and cons of each one. I had subscribed to the PlayStation Plus or whatever like more than a year ago, and then I didn't renew that. And I consider myself a pretty informed gamer, but even I couldn't see like the advantage for me to continue to subscribe to that. And I'm saying this as someone who, if I had to choose just one console to play, I would choose PlayStation just because I absolutely need some of their exclusives that are not on other platforms. So if I had a gun pointed to my head, I would just choose the PlayStation.
Power of exclusives. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. At the end of the day, for core gamers, I think that's what matters. Still, I use my Series X the most as my main console. Because of Game Pass and because of Quick Resume, mostly. I don't play every game on Game Pass. Obviously, I just play some games that I like. I still buy most of my games and all that. I don't see a future. I don't see a future where subscriptions will ever be the main portion of the market, and I'm not saying that's what's being claimed here.
Right.
But mostly because I think people tend to forget about what is the biggest slice of the gaming market in the world, which is mobile, and the trends that are happening there, and how mobile is basically creeping into everything, right? With, again, like I mentioned before, with all these free-to-play games that are cross-platform, cross-play. And I think a lot of people are still kind of ignoring or dismissing that as a trend. But it is a big trend that arguably started with games like Genshin Impact, or we can even say Fortnite or Warframe or whatever. But it's growing. It's growing a lot. And I don't see those games I use ever like loosely, but I don't see those games being attached to subscriptions in the future. I don't see most of free-to-play market being attached to subscriptions. And that, not to say that subscription services will not exist. Of course, I think they will. There's definitely companies that will try continue to do that. but they will always be, relatively speaking, a niche that can go all the way up to hundreds of millions, but they will not be the most mainstream distribution model, let's say, for gaming. And I'm talking like long term. I'm talking like big picture here, like 20, 30 years from now or whatever. Now, from Microsoft, I think we also need to face a reality which sometimes people don't seem to forget, and I think it's an obvious fact, but many will disagree, is that if Microsoft, their goal was to have presumably like 100 million subscribers to Game Pass, and if they had attained that goal as quickly as they probably hoped to do it when they first launched, because again, like you said, Game Pass has been here for a while now. It's a cross-generational service.
That's right.
It was already on the last Xbox. They were probably planning to have like at least like 50 million subscribers by the time that the Xbox Series X and X came out, and they would probably be, I'm talking like 5-6 years ago, they were probably expecting to have like maybe 100 million by 2026 or 7
That's
or,
right.
or 30. And if they had that goal, if they attained that goal, if they had right now, let's say if Microsoft right now had 60 or 70 million or 80 million subscribers, I don't think they would be releasing their games on other platforms. I think they would be taking it all for themselves. And that's the thing that people seem to miss, is that yes, they're focusing on Game Pass. Yes, they want Game Pass to grow, but Game Pass did not grow as they expected, and that's why they became a third-party publisher. It's not because it was a grand strategy from them. They did that as a reaction to the slow growth of Game Pass, in my opinion.
Yes.
I think this is a very logical perspective on the growth and on the distribution strategy from Microsoft. So they became a third-party publisher out of necessity, not because there was this grand wizard vision.
Absolutely.
Super insightful. But a lot of people think this. And I respect people who think that. But I don't see how that from a corporate, because they want monopolies. They want to dominate. That's what a company wants. The company doesn't want to share revenue. And if they could if they could eat up the market share from Sony with PlayStation on hardware and on software, they would prefer that instead of having to launch their games on their platform, right? Of course, at the end of the day, it's all about profit and about revenue and meeting those quarterly goals and all that. But it's not like Microsoft happily walked this path since they launched Game Pass, to release, and we see that just from the last 3 years, where everything that Phil Spencer has been saying and everything, they keep changing the strategy, almost like it's like very predictable. Like every 3 or 4 months they keep changing what they're saying. First it's just a couple of games, and it's more. Then they see that the games are not doing well. Then they see the Game Pass is not growing. So
the only thing predictable with Xbox is that every 3 months something will change. That's what's predictable. We don't know what they're going to change, but it will change.
But to the consumers, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
But to the consumers, that's what's really, that's what's been hurting, I think, Xbox as a brand, is that consumers keep seeing that changing of strategy and changing of decisions, and they lose trust as a brand, because ultimately they are a brand. We're talking about commerce, and if you're selling a smartphone or whatever, like I worked in smartphone companies and other tech companies and whatever, you cannot just keep changing what you're doing with your product. Like the consumers will not be there for the next one. So that's why I also think, like, if Microsoft were to launch a Xbox Series X2 in 2027, I think the only people who would buy that console would be like maybe 40% of the people now on a Series X. I think that thing would be dead on arrival, to be honest. It would not grow anything.
I happen to agree with you. Yeah. No,
that's pretty much it.
What do you got, Mag?
I
want to hear whys too.
On the last meeting, of their projections of a next gen console launching by itself, they said their internal projection is 10 million units.
10 million.
That's it
for a next gen console.
No, that's not 10 million console units. That's the projection. That's a projection where they talked about when they're tossing around all these ideas of, do we do the handheld? Do we not do the handheld? Do we do the console? Do we not do the console? And then one of the ones was that they looked at it and they said from their metrics, they estimated it'll be about 10 million.
For another gen console, yes.
Because at that point, they will have other apps. They'll have other avenues of accessibility that'll be cheaper. And they're saying that if it was a dedicated dedicated console, their internal estimates are 10 million. Yes.
The core foundational problem with all of this and why they're going back and, sort of recreating the wheel, if you will, is this. They thought that, okay, if they put everything day and date, it's going to make Game Pass subscriber counts go astronomically through the roof. That's fine, because now the money that you would have lost, that you're losing because of the game, because they're not buying the game, you're getting in perpetuity because they're on a subscription model in perpetuity. However, the problem is that if you look at Game Pass, let's just say for numbers' sake, 40 million people on Game Pass. Would y'all say that's an accurate number?
I'd say slower than that, 30.
Okay, I would say
let's play devil's advocate and say 40
million core.
Let's say 40 million. Divide that by so let's do 20 million, of which you take 1/4 of that. Let's just say of those 40 million, you would say 10 million are your hardcore Xbox fans.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you take even 50% of that, because not everybody's going to buy every game, that's 5 million potential units of games that people are not buying because they are on Game Pass. Like, for example, me, why in God's name would I ever want to buy a Bethesda game if I'm also subscribed to Game Pass?
Right.
I mean, they're in perpetuity. I don't ever need to. There is never going to go off the service, because as long as there's a service, their game is going to be there because they're owned by Microsoft. So
that's the question from the panel, actually, is because the thing is, even though you could say the current danger is the position of Xbox no longer feel the need to or want to buy games. Because I have to be honest, I haven't bought an Xbox game since 2017. I was going to ask you, Wise, and I was going to ask Daniel, what was the last Xbox game you bought? Because
that's a great question.
Yeah, because you guys play on Game Pass. So in a way, we have kind of already been infiltrated in the sense
Wait, Nib, what's the last Xbox first party game or game they bought on Xbox?
Yeah.
What are you asking?
Yeah, what's the last Xbox first party game?
First party. Okay. I gotta think about that. I gotta think about that too.
Nib, that's a good question, man. Because I gotta say it's got to be probably years. Because the only thing I was buying on there before I started doing all my third party on PlayStation was because I game share with my wife as well. On PlayStation, I was only buying third party and Game Pass over there. So as to purchasing a first party game, it might be Halo 5.
Yeah. Gears 5?
No, Gears 5 was on Game Pass.
Oh, it was, yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me it was Quantum Break.
No, but
Quantum Break. Wow.
Oh yeah, Jesus.
2016. I mean, I think I might have. I think I definitely purchased Gears 5, even though that's after the Game Pass was around. I definitely.
Yeah, but just the long story short, the only thing Game Pass Ultimate is doing is cannibalizing sales from Microsoft. Because these would be the same games that I would have bought.
You would have bought them
had it not been
absolutely
day and date on the service.
Same as me was. I would have bought them as well. Yeah.
I mean, I can't speak, but the sad thing is, I've only paid £47 average per year of Game Pass because I've always got it on special deals or Xbox Live upgrades or CD keys or whatever. So it's kind of tragic because it was supposed to be £180 a year, I think, anyway. And my average works out at maybe it's 50 quid now because one of the years I got for 80, but a few years I got for 80, but yeah, like £50. And I tell you right now, I would have spent a hell of a lot more than that per year buying their games.
Mm-hmm. So, another thing, and I'll just put this out there, Daniel, the whole conversation started earlier in the night when we were talking about just sales, etc. But now Microsoft rekindles this Call of Duty marketing with Sony, that whole FTC, and we're going to take, I don't think Microsoft ever said they were going to take Call of Duty away, but it was a 3-year deal and Sony held out. Then it went to a 10-year deal. And now those deals, I mean, I think you can take those deals and throw them right out the window. I think Microsoft is more than happy to let Sony do something. It looks like they have the bundles out right now. There's a bundle for a PS5 Slim. And guys, tell me if I'm right or wrong. Mag, I think you said this on X. There's a PS5 Slim bundle that includes Call of Duty Black Ops 6 for $399, and the Xbox Series S, there's 1 terabyte is $425.
That is correct. Yes, and then it comes bundled with the game, right? So if you're a Call of Duty fan and you didn't jump into the PS5 ecosystem, now's your time to do it. I wouldn't expect Sony's prices to remain this low forever because I think, as I was talking about in I was talking about in one of my other videos, I was saying that when they get closer to the window of Grand Theft Auto 6, which I have said for 2 effing years, which nobody believed me, they had the marketing rights for, and they will have the marketing rights for, they will no longer have the discounted prices of the console and the hardware because they know that they're going to sell it no matter what, right? Very similar to how Take-Two could charge $90 if they felt like it, and they know they're still going to sell. Regardless of what Death Singer says, it's going to sell, and he's going to buy it. So the point is that they know that they're going to do that. So now is the time to jump into that. And you're underselling. Can you imagine underselling the Series S for $75 and it comes bundled with Black Ops? Now, the thing is, you mentioned something about the marketing with Black Ops. Why wouldn't you? I literally said about an hour ago, said 84% of the sales of Black Ops 6, the actual sales, not the engagement on subscription services, were on the PS5. This is a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
Actually, if I was Sony, never mind. I would change my mind. Never mind. If I was Sony, I'd say no to the marketing deal. You know why? Because why do you need to pay for the marketing deal when you got 84% of the sales without the marketing deal?
Yeah, you can do it without the marketing deal.
What are we talking about here?
Again, you know what I would say? I guess I would chalk it up to mind share because now you have people that are walking into GameStop or looking online, and it doesn't matter because you can't even say. You know me, I always want to see the brick and mortars thrive. But you know it's harder and harder every year for them to survive out there with the digital market. But you can order. But when you go and look on PlayStation, you see the Call of Duty ad on there, or you go anywhere on Best Buy and you see that box with that Call of Duty, it puts a 1+1. And remember, Mag, a lot of the people out there, you have the numbers. I don't have them in front of me. And Nib has them too. 2.5 games bought per year. Usually one of them is going to be Call of Duty, Madden, NBA 2K. So you have one of the big three that's on your box. People don't know what's going on with the FTC. They don't know who. They just say, "Oh yeah, I've been buying Call of Duty on PlayStation for the past decade. So now I'm going to keep doing it because there it is on the box." You know. So I that's my only answer for you, Meg. Now you may go, Mooch. I don't like your answer. I'm not saying it's great, but it has to be the mindset for why would they pay for it otherwise?
That's what I'm saying. So why even bother paying for it when you're getting the milk for free? Just like I said, Black Ops 6, you absolutely dominated, and now they're bundling it in there. That's going to continue to happen. Why wouldn't you? But this is also beneficial for Microsoft, right? Because then 70% of that sale goes to them as they are the publisher. So to them, it's a win-win-win-win.
That's
across the board for everybody. So Microsoft's like, yeah, whatever, man. Splash the games all over your PS5 boxes, the logos. We won't even give you the whatever. Just sell, folks.
We'll do the artwork. 70%.
Yeah.
Right.
They're
taking 70% of the pimp.
Be in the hardware game anymore. That's the problem.
I know as a fact they don't want to be in the hardware game at all. I know they don't. But the thing is, they still have to have accessibility for the people who are.
Yeah, they do. They
as Nib had said earlier, it's still not a small number, but it's a number you do not want to lose either. Right. You still have to cater to it. But what they're thinking is, how do we cater it for cheaper? That's what's happening, and that's why the hardware prices have gone up. They are going the route of Apple. You notice how Apple can have a $3,000 VR headset, but they don't bitch about not selling? Why? Is because they price it at a point where they don't lose money.
Yep.
And they don't mass produce them. They will just produce them based on demand. So the same thing happens. If they do a internal projection, which they did for about 10 million next-gen consoles, they will produce 5 out of the gate. Okay, and then they will produce another million, then another million, then another million, and that's it. But they will charge accordingly. So expect a console like that to be $800, even if it's not technologically more superior than, let's say, their competition. Right? They will charge that because they're not going to lose money, and they're done losing money. I know as a fact. You all know that. You see it even with Nintendo Switch. Same thing with their prices, the way that they're going, and the way of their software. And then eventually Sony, the same thing. Expect the PS6 to be no less than $800, if not more. Right? So the thing is, they're done losing money.
No, the biggest concern right now for Microsoft, what they're actually also worried about is also the Steam OS integration. They are putting all of their big brains behind this whole bloated Windows running gaming software, because right now it has come out as well that Steam OS runs games better, metric for metric, than on a Windows operating system. And they don't want that, because if it's on Windows, they can sell you a whole host of things. So they are trying to work and pivot Xbox to be that app that basically does what SteamOS does for your PC, but in an Xbox form. That is what they're really concerned about. Right
Wise, what you're talking about here is exactly why they canceled the handheld. What did they say when they canceled? Not delayed, canceled the handheld. What it is that now they have the teams focusing on improving the Windows 11 operating system for the existing handhelds, and that whatever the Project Keenan coming out later this year, which is also a third-party handheld. So they're doing that. They're focusing on that. But you're absolutely right, and that's where I could see. By the way, another reason when people keep talking about this Steam Xbox hybrid thing, I don't know anything about it. I haven't heard anything about it, but I could tell you that it would actually make more sense for them to have one development unit where they could make for PC and PlayStation only, instead of having to do PC, Xbox, and PlayStation with 3 different types of hardware. I could see them doing something like that where they can actually cut out that middleman of having to develop for a dedicated Xbox, and they just do it like, it'll just be like a cheaper PC you could buy.
Yeah.
Right? Like a pre-built PC, that'll be your new Xbox, quote unquote. And they could do that, and that could be cutting out even more cost in the future. So essentially, you're still in the hardware business, but you are cutting back in a certain way from some of the R&D that'll save you a shitload of money later on.
Because also pay attention to what Apple is doing. Apple is also trying to pivot their whole ecosystem as well to become a game platform, because it's come on record that they are trying to create an app that basically is a launcher for their entire ecosystem. And that is what also Microsoft is scared of, because they need to have that. They do not need to lose Windows. Windows is the hill that they will die on. They will sacrifice everything for Windows.
Who doesn't have Windows in one aspect or another?
That's right.
Wise, how's it going, buddy? I haven't seen you for a while. Sorry, I didn't even say hi to you when you came on the show earlier.
Well, he snuck in the back door, which is why. And shout out to Lord Metroid. He says,
I'm
"Watch."
I was
going to say that's kind of his,
well,
that's kind of his modus
I was just going to
operandi,
say,
right?
yeah, sorry about that slip of the tongue there. So, Lord Metroid says, "Watch Wasted with Wise Friday nights at 6 p.m. Cheers!" What a great plug by Lord Metroid. By the way, Lord Metroid, you kind of bring me right into my next topic. Shout out also to the great Ocelot, who says, "Hit that like button, guys! Hit that like button." We had 332 still here after 2 hours, guys. I really appreciate everybody being here. Hit that like button. Do me a favor. Even if you're like, I'm on the fence, this Mooch guy, hit the like button. Let's do a test here. Let's see if we can get that like all the way up to over 300. It'd be great to see that tonight. So, Lord Metroid, who's a big fan of the show, I talk to him all the time outside the show on PlayStation and other great gaming places. He's very excited for this Nintendo Switch. So I'll go and start with the great Daniel, who's joining us tonight. Daniel, the Switch 2... seemingly, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong. I read a lot of the other articles. Today was busy at work. Switch 2 requires a day 1 update before use. Has Nintendo lost their way, or is this a sign of a stricter Nintendo ahead, Daniel? That you have because it's basically what I hear is bricked before that update. Then you have a situation where the games are coming out, some of them, not all of them, $80. A lot of the remakes are going to be full price or a $20 upgrade, I believe, if you have the current Zeldas. Listen, I'm a Nintendo person, Daniel. I grew up on Nintendo, the whole Nintendo versus Sega. I was a Nintendo kid, so that's the line I drew in the sand, and I'm still there today. I'm still probably very much going to have I don't know if it'll be day 1, but I'll have a Switch 2 at some point. Daniel, what do you think when you hear about all of this? It seems like there's a lot of, usually Nintendo doesn't get this kind of turmoil, and you've written articles, GameIndustry.biz, again, you see Nintendo usually gets this pass, Daniel. Nintendo's getting a little bit of slack this time around. It's not going to be this easy transition as they go into Switch 2. What's your take on the whole emphasis and cloud that's around Switch 2 right now as we approach launch week?
Yeah, same as you, by the way. My first console was the NES, so I have the Switch. I had all consoles from Nintendo.
Me too.
Although I was more of a Sega guy when I was a kid, but anyway. But I find it, from Nintendo's perspective, I understand how they want to make the console like. I understand these measures, what they're doing.
Yes.
Obviously, the logic is clear. Now, from the perspective of the consumer, and that's always where I try to place myself in. I'm surprised. Honestly, I think there should be even more outrage against Nintendo right now, just because they're doing so many quote-unquote anti-consumer choices for their hardware. I think it's inconceivable. If you buy a console and knowing that the brand behind the console, in this case the Switch 2, they can just brick it like remotely. And I know this is not new. I'm not being naive about it. I know, but just the notion that they can do that for a product, a physical object that you buy, I think there should be laws against it. I know I'm being very hyper exaggerating perhaps, but seriously, like I don't see that as a consumer. I cannot stand the idea that the company, a brand, can just turn off and brick my console or even my phone or whatever.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not being naive. I understand this is what companies do, and they have been doing this for years now in different industries, in different tech segments of the market. I know this is kind of standard. But just because it's normal and just because it has been normalized, I don't need to agree with it as a consumer. I still think it's bad, and frankly, I think it's kind of outrageous. Having said that, yes, I will buy the Switch 2, just like most people. I mean, yeah.
No, Daniel, it's about. I only laughed because it was like you gave the greatest doom and gloom I've ever heard, and then you're like, that being said, I'll be in line early 8 a.m. next Thursday.
Because it's very simple. Because at the end of the day, it's about the games. The content is king, and I want to play the games that Nintendo
Great
does.
point.
Some of them.
Great point.
So that's it. That's the bottom line. So it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter. Like they could probably sell a Switch with a Nazi swastika on it, and I would still buy it, and then put a sticker on top of it, just so I wouldn't see the hate symbol or whatever. I'm joking, but seriously, that's the point. Is the games.
The games have always been their strongest point, when it comes down to it. Yes. But I think that the practices and what they're preaching recently has turned a lot of people off. And I mean, I'm seeing a lot of people that just buy consoles because they love buying new consoles. And I see people saying, you know what? Not this time. And that's alarming because Nintendo's always gotten away with almost what they wanted to do. I mean, even if you wanted to go buy Breath of the Wild right now, I'm not going to say full price. Maybe it's $10 off at your respected GameStop or Best Buy. But it's still almost, and people are like, well, that's all right. And I mean, I know the great Death Singer is going to chime in when he has one of the best lines. He says Nintendo is going to Nintendo, and I hope he says it again tonight. But yeah, Daniel, I don't know. It seems like one of the times that Nintendo's not getting a pass.
Yeah, but I was going to say, but one of the other very recognizable factors, one of the brand values of Nintendo is their ease of use and accessibility for their consoles. I mean, historically speaking, for all their console generations, since the 8-bit until now. And I think the Switch 2 is kind of breaking with that tradition. It's more complicated. I mean, how are you going to explain, to your uncle, granny, whatever, those people, the casuals, basically, how are you going to explain to them this concept about game cards or game keys or whatever that don't have the game, and then you buy physical, but actually you don't really have the game physical, you need to download. And all these concepts, it's much less user friendly for the casual, for the mainstream, for the mass market consumer. And I think that's always the vision of Nintendo, is to get that mass market, like it did with the Wii and like they did with the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important to always keep in mind that Nintendo can fail. I mean, they have a lot of money. Yes, they can lose a lot of money for many years. But they have shown us that core audience for Nintendo, that really hardcore that will buy no matter what, they're like somewhere between 10 maybe to 20 million people. Like the Wii U, it sold like 13 million units or something like that. So Nintendo can, if they do things wrong, if they're not good enough, like actually marketing their products, there's always a scenario where they might just simply fail, like they did with the Wii U. And like arguably, and I know people will oppose, will counter this, but arguably, like they failed with the N64 against PlayStation. Arguably, like they failed with the GameCube against the PS2. The handhelds kept Nintendo alive during that time. The Game Boy Advance, the DS, and all that. That was their money printing machines during that time, because on home consoles they were not doing well. I mean, just speaking strictly on sales, on units, as we know. I'm not discussing quality of games or anything like that. And then, they had the Wii kind of saved them, basically. That was really like the console that hit the zeitgeist more than any other, arguably, for them. And then, right after the Wii, they failed. I mean, the Wii U failed. That was like their Dreamcast moment, pretty much, in terms of sales. So they're not, what I mean is they're not bulletproof. So, yes, I do think the Switch 2 will be successful. I don't think it will, fail or anything like that. But I don't think we should assume that just because it's Nintendo, it's going to do well no matter what, because we have many case studies in recent history of them not doing well, just because of the decisions they make with their hardware.
Yeah.
And now they don't have the DS, they don't have the Game Boy to sustain them. Let's say if their home console fails, because now they have it all. It's a hybrid, right? The Switch, it's all that.
Yeah.
So this is a lot to consider for Nintendo. So Nintendo, I think they really need to be careful how they message the Switch 2, and I don't mean their name of the console or anything like that.
Yeah.
But how they message their delivery and their distribution of games. Because again, I know people who bought the Wii. I mean, people who are not like core gamers who bought the Wii before and who bought the Switch. And a lot of those people, I don't see them necessarily buying the Switch 2. Like I just don't see those kinds of people, like cousins of mine or whatever, like just going to a store online and buying a Switch 2 unless they, there's some kind of
the other thing is the price point, Daniel, because when you stop and think about it, right? Because if you look at the Wii, Wii U, the Switch, I think we were somewhere in that $299 to $399 respectively. Right now now they're asking $500. And let's be honest, I know you can get it for $450, but everybody, if you're going to get the Switch 2 next week or the week after, don't tell me you're not picking up. You're not going to pick up Mario Kart. I mean, come on. You're definitely going to be playing Mario Kart. So, I mean, you're probably either getting the $500 bundle or you're going to be paying whatever it is, $80 if you bought the $450 version. So you might as well just get the bundle if it's available to you. So, Meg, you always say you have your ear to the ground with people in the numbers. Daniel made a point with the whole, the numbers and sales and Wii U. I don't think we're anywhere near Wii U problems at all. But my question to you is do you think, though, you'll see a decline in what Nintendo originally thought they were going to... I think they just said we were going to do Switch 2, and everybody was, immediately going to hand in their Switch 1 for a Switch 2. And I don't know if is that one-to-one convergence going to happen?
No, I don't think so. And I can tell you this, even just from a small perspective. I got a GameStop just down the street from me, and they did not sell out of pre-orders.
Wow.
They've sold out of every single pre-order of every single console for decades that I've been going there. Same owner, right? And this has not... I could walk in next week when it comes out and buy one. But here's the other thing. I did a small litmus test, and I talked about this on a few other shows where I did this, and I said, all my neighbors, all the adults anyway, right? And all the kids, they all in the same class, whatever. We all live in the same street.
Right.
I asked every single one of them because they all have a Switch in the home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them multiple Switches. One of them has a Switch Lite and a Switch attached. I got an OLED Switch and I have a Switch Lite as well. Well, for the kids anyway, not for me. But either way, the point is I asked all of them, I go, what do you guys think about the Switch 2? First of all, half of them didn't even know it was coming out. The other half did. When I told them the price, they said absolutely not and literally laughed and just carried on with the other conversation. So not one of them said I'm getting it.
Wow.
And this was 7 different families that I asked on the street. It's not like I went door to door like a politician. I was talking to them casually here and there. And when we hang out and stuff, and I mentioned that, but up here in Canada, you want to talk about price point? You guys are paying $450 and $500, right? $450 for the base, $500 for the bundle with Mario Kart World or whatever the hell it's called, right? Up here in Canada, it's $800. So Nintendo can kiss my ass. I'm not buying. I don't give a shit about Donkey Kong grabbing bananas and this and that. I'm not paying $800 for a Switch 2 for underpowered hardware. I don't care how good the games are. They're fantastic games that I can play. Yes.
Also, there's another big problem, a huge problem that people are not identifying with this whole launch with the Switch 2. It's that this is the first time a Nintendo console is launching without a Zelda or a Mario. It's launching with a Mario Kart, which has never been done. Now, one can say...
Now, mind you, it's a big Mario Kart.
It is.
I mean, they're doing
it is.
open world
but
kind
is
of
it
thing.
enough? Okay, I agree. I don't know how many the other ones sold, 70 million, 80 million, whatever it was sold. However... most people cannot tell the difference between Mario Kart 8 and Mario Kart World screen for screen. So unless you're compelled to buy it because you just want to buy Mario Kart, there's no enticing offer for people to buy it. And it's bothering Nintendo. They're shit scared. They're corporate CEOs. They got a higher end console. They got only one AAA game that they're sort of banking on. And most people, when they're hearing through the scuttlebutt, they're like, yeah, it's a Mario Kart, but it's not like, oh my God, I got to play that next Mario Kart because it's totally different from what I've seen before.
Oldie Tron says he's not talking to you directly, Wise, but he said Mario Kart is their most successful IP. And the other thing, not only is it a larger scaled Mario Kart wise, but and listen, I think sales, you may be able to prove me wrong with this comment, but I think we're kind of underestimating. I mean, Donkey Kong is still a household name, and that's a game that's only playable on Switch too. Now, you could turn around wise and say, come on, Mooch, you're telling me people are going to go run out there for Donkey Kong? I'm going to tell you that there's a good portion of people that play Nintendo games that can't wait for that new Donkey Kong game.
Well, I mean, I saw that Donkey Kong game. It didn't look like it was like a massive, like a Donkey Kong Country style of experience or whatever. It seemed like a smaller experience. Are they charging a little less for that one? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that one's $70. That one's $70 in US dollars. I don't know what in Canada you guys have like a 75% markup. I have no idea what's going on.
Ridiculous. Lansville Paul in the chat. He says, "Yeah, Mag, I was at Square One Mall. They said the same thing. That's in Mississauga near me." What were you talking about? That they still have pre-orders? Let me know in the chat. Sorry, I don't like to type. I talk to people directly.
That's okay.
So I'm curious to see if they still have pre-orders sitting at the Square One Mall, because that's the trend we're seeing, because people are literally laughing off the price. Because the thing is, at the end of the day, the people that I talk to, like I said, I did that small little litmus test on my street. They're not gamers per se. They're not like me. They don't have 4 screens going on at once right now while I'm doing a podcast.
Right.
And I got all kinds of
I got 4 screens on too. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. You know
what
I mean?
are we doing?
We have all this stuff and floodlights and consoles and PCs and whatever. They're not doing this. This is for their kids. And I would have to imagine that outside of the hardcore, I would think that 75 to 80%, maybe even higher, are not for the hardcore. Those are for the casuals. Casuals are not paying $800. I mean, at least up here. And even in the United States.
Yeah, $500.
$500 for their kids. Yeah. I mean, some people have the means to do that, but when people are still bitching about eggs, I mean, I know eggs are going down over there, but like, you know what I'm saying? People are still having a tough time or whatever, and life's getting more expensive and this and that, whatever. And you start looking at this stuff, and I'm like, you know what? Does your Switch 1 work? Yeah. Okay, good. Play that.
And see, that's what I was saying earlier. That's what I was saying earlier to you, even Mooch. Remember, I said that's what they're going to lose. They're going to lose that new parent. Okay, my child is 4 years old. I'm a new dad or a new mom. You walk into a not Toys R Us, but a GameStop. I'm eating myself there. And you're like, okay, well, what do I buy this child? And you look at something, okay, it's a Switch Lite, $200. Okay, immediate impulse buy. That is gone. For a Switch 2, you don't do that. They're going to lose that big audience of those individuals.
That's what I'm trying to say, Wise. When you're turning away the hardcore, when you're turning away the casual just from a price point where people start to be a little bit more cautious, for $299, $399, let's say, people will be much more in tune to just say, you know what, I'll just buy one, whatever. It's not the end of the world. But when you start hitting that $500 mark for a casual, that's where they really start to go,
Especially
you know what
for
I mean?
A 5-year-old and 6-year-old, $500 is not a negotiable price.
And this is what I'm talking about. I'm saying, like, from a casual point of view, that's where you start to think twice. And then from the undiscerning eye, okay, the undiscerning eye, I could put on, just like you said, the other Mario Kart, and this one, you'd be like, all right, it's the same shit. I see the Italian guys inside a little cart.
Exactly.
Throwing shells. You know what I mean? It looks the same. You know what I mean? It looks the same. But like, they will do well, I think, to start. The original with their pre-orders and stuff.
Mag, the original. You never
answered me in the chat. I want to know if.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say for this the Lansville Paul guy, I wanted to know if Square One in Mississauga still has pre-orders, because this will be a good idea of how people are not lining up. Oh, there he goes, walking in those stores and seeing a PS5.
In Montgomery, Alabama, the pre-orders have not sold through yet. The bundles have sold, but the pre-orders themselves, you can still get a $449 console. You can't get a $500 console though.
Interesting.
Well, Old Man Gaming says $500 US is 690 Canadian. So I don't.
Oh no! No, plus tax. The $100 in tax.
The $100 in tax over the 690.
Yeah.
Jeez.
It works out to almost exactly $799.
All right, so let's use, if you don't mind, Meg, if you want to do the convergence, you can. But Cake Batter's super chat. Thank you for the super chats, by the way. The super chat's working tonight. It's a miracle. Help Mooch out. Cake Batter says, "What's the magic price for Switch 2? What's Switch 2's price? What should it be?" And let's just say $500 US. Let's just speak in the US dollars terms, not to. I assume over in the UK it's very, very similar. Nib or Dessinger can correct me on that.
Thank you, Aaron Walsh. Makes sense, buddy. I say $399, Mooch. Aaron Walsh said the same thing in the chat. It's out of the impulse buy territory. That's all I was trying to say.
So $399 is the magic number for you, Meg?
$399 is a good number for underpowered hardware.
Okay, so Nib or Death Singer, you got a number for me? Look at the England guys.
What's
going on?
I'm following chart. I'm trying to keep an eye on the chart.
Starmer got them. He's putting them next to that other guy.
No. It's like 350 over here, so I don't know. Like,
what do you mean it's 350?
It's 350 pounds or euro?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's basically the same thing, but like what?
No, pounds.
In pounds? 350
350 pounds for the Switch 2?
The Switch OLED 350. I think the Switch 2 is more than that, dude.
Yeah, it's more than that.
Captain Chat is saying €395 in the chat. No, is that pounds? So that's yeah.
Let me check.
Standard. So basically,
because when I was looking at the
it's
400. Yeah, 400. 3. But either way, it's like you could cut 100 off that, and it'd probably be an ideal price. I just still think it's gonna sell because at the end of the day, it's when you look at it, it's like okay, they're gonna show you Mario Kart. Everyone's gonna go out and buy it because it's super successful. Everyone wants to play online. It's gonna happen. Like look at what happened with Mario Kart 8. Right, 60 million selling units. Like it's out there.
Yeah.
I would have said it'd fly off the shelves if they had like a brand new launch Zelda. Because if they had a Zelda as well as the new Mario Kart on launch day, that shit would be gone. Because Nintendo has the IP that will make people buy it. It's like as soon as they show you the new Zelda, everyone's gonna be like, "Yep, give me my Switch 2." I don't give a shit what I said.
That's Singer. Let me ask you a question because B Money, shout out to B Money, man. B Money, I don't know. You should write more. You should write books. B Money's on top of this because you know what, Meg? I was riding along with you when you're talking about impulse buy, but B Money goes $499. He's talking about U.S. price here. $499 will be the new impulse price as the new consoles and handhelds come out. So what he's saying is, and Meg, you've said this tonight. You said be prepared. I said anywhere from 600 to 800. You're saying 800, maybe more. For PS6, new Xbox Series X2, whatever they're calling it. The handhelds are all $700. He's saying, guys, you're comparing it to today. This is going to be around for 8 more years, and you're going to have new consoles coming out in 3 more years. $499 is going to be an impulse buy.
That's fair. That's actually a fair statement because, as you said, like a PS6 and like a whatever Xbox is going to call whatever they're doing. Yeah, he's not wrong there in that respect. So maybe they're just sort of future-proofing the price point. However, I'm just saying from now, from the viewpoint of right now, it may be the kind of thing that, like I said, I've seen parents literally laugh it off,
right?
Saying I'm not paying that for my kid. Like, you know what I mean? $800. Are you out of your mind?
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean that's for the bundle. I mean you could get it for $700 without the game, right? But what are you going to do? Get a $700 console without the game? What's the point?
Yeah, no, what are you going to do with it? Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. It makes sense. But yeah, he's not wrong in that respect. That is that when down the road, it would make much more sense. But you know what? In 3 years, if you're not selling this thing now, in 3 years, they're going to be having a different conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, I'm not saying it's not going to sell. It'll sell to the hardcore, but the more interesting thing is to see the demographic of how people are going to hang on to those the Switches they already have for their children, but what we're seeing from the pre-sales is that it's not.
Right.
Because otherwise it would have been impossible to buy. Remember how hard it was to get a Wii, how hard it was to get a Switch when they came out? Months. I mean, even even when they had those the Nintendo Minis, you couldn't get them for a year.
Yeah,
right. Because I know that's a different price point, but the point is that the product was hard to buy. But now I could walk in and just pick one up. That's got to be that's telling, Mooch. It's telling.
It really is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's.
No, I hear you, Daniel. You're over in China right now. What is the asking price for the Switch 2 bundle? And you said Switch 2 is probably rumored to do very well over in China.
Yeah, so the Switch, just to clarify, the Switch 2 is not yet officially announced to launch in China.
Oh, it's not okay. I thought I saw a tweet saying something. It's all but certain.
Yes, but well, eventually. But the thing is, the console will be available here day one through imports. It will be in stock. People will be buying it very easily. I was just checking the prices now on platforms, on e-commerce platforms.
Yeah.
And the base price for the base model is around $580 approximately, US dollars if we convert.
Okay.
$580 more or less. And this is because it's a premium, because it's consoles that will have to come from Taiwan or from Hong Kong to the mainland, or even from Japan in some cases. And the demand here, I think, will be big because the Switch has been huge in China, and this is actually what I write. Sorry for going on off topic, but this is what I write the most actually on every platform I write about is the console market in China. China has sold millions and millions of unaccounted Switches that are basically all from Japan. So when you see the sales charts in Japan that the Switch sells so much and all that, you always have to consider that at least, and this is my estimation, conservative, I think, at least 20% of those sales are actually in China and not in Japan for the Japanese models. So China is a very considerable market for the Switch, and right now, from what I see online, again, I don't see, like you guys are saying, for every other market. I don't see that hype for the Switch 2. Not as much. Again, not from the mass market, not from the casual. And again, just to clarify, when I mentioned before the Wii U, I was not saying that we are in Wii U kind of situation for the Switch 2. Well, far from that. My point was simply that the Wii U sold approximately 13 million units, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the core audience that will buy a Nintendo console, no matter what. That's my point. So that's everybody else, or at least a vast amount of everybody else, needs to be convinced to buy it. And this is the case. It's going to be the case for the Switch 2.
Mm-hmm.
And just like it was for the Switch, you had that base core Nintendo fans that bought the Switch because they would no matter what. And then you had that mass market that took it all the way up to more than 100 million units, just like it happened with the Wii. So that was my point with that. And that's that kind of audience that Nintendo always wants to convince. And now, arguably, they have more tools to do so. They have all the theme parks. They have all the movie that really pushed the brand out to the mainstream in a way that never happened before outside of gaming for Nintendo. So there's a lot of different factors. There's a lot of different ways that Nintendo can potentialize the brand and make the casual user and the casual consumer more aware of the Switch 2. But just like you guys are all saying, it's very hard to convince people to pay for that price for the Switch 2, especially if you don't have a killer app at the beginning. The Switch, arguably, the reason why it sold so much from launch was the form factor. I think the form factor.
The form factor, and it launched with Zelda.
It
launched with Zelda. You launched with Zelda and Mario. Exactly. I mean, it's a must get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But just to finish my argument, yes, Zelda and Mario are very important. But again, they are not the games that will push the console to 100 million. They sell a lot. They sell tens of millions. But what pushed the Wii to become successful was Wii Sports. Was not Zelda or Mario. It was Wii Sports. And I think, and this is just my opinion, that for the Switch it was more the form factor than the actual games. Now, obviously, the games sold tons. But then you saw also games like Splatoon is like huge in Japan. It's one of the best-selling games for the Switch this generation, and many other games. So it's not just about Mario and Zelda. Of course, that helps. But again, the Wii U also had a Zelda at launch, and yes, it was also available on the Wii. But we also had the same situation with the Switch. You had the Zelda that was also available on the Wii U. So I think there's more to it. There's more than that to convince that wider audience that Nintendo really needs to have in their pocket. Otherwise, they go back to being the niche third vendor that sells between 10 to 20 million consoles, which was their place during the Wii U and during the GameCube and during the N64 era. And I'm not saying I'm not saying we're there. I'm just saying that's their core bulletproof audience. But the mainstream people, the casuals, they don't care. They know Nintendo, but they're okay. They can live without a console. They need to be convinced. And I would say that the right price actually for that impulse buy, it depends on markets, of course, but I think even $399 is too much. I think $350 is really, that would be the golden ticket for Nintendo to really sell out everywhere and to have those people really buy impulse. even $399, I think it's a push, to be honest. And but again, it depends on markets. This is dangerous always to generalize, because even if we talk about Europe, different markets have very different social and economical contexts. I mean, the UK is very different than if you're talking about Greece or even Germany or Portugal or Spain or whatever. So, and not to mention, then you have like going to other growing markets like Brazil, Southeast Asia, and all, and even Africa. I mean, in some key markets, it's growing, and this is something that gaming media doesn't really focus on. And obviously, the Middle East, the MENA region, it's like they're hyping it so much in the last few years. And a lot of the Japanese consoles are, I mean, and Neeb probably knows this better than me, but even when I was in Dubai and checked that, I saw a lot of Switch consoles there that were the Japanese models being sold there. So there's this influx of there's this there's this dynamic of the consoles circulating, going around the world, and it's not as linear as it's not as linear as people think. It's not like, I would argue that Japan is kind of an insignificant market, actually, relatively speaking. I know people will hate me for saying this, but just like all caps, relatively speaking. Yeah, and because Japan is very mobile. I mean, Japan is super mobile centric, and people don't realize that. Japan is like hardcore mobile, free to play. That's their thing right now. It's not consoles. So people
I was
still
literally
think that,
told, right, like,
anyway.
Because Japanese homes are quite small. Like, they don't even like big devices. Like,
that's right.
Well, there's that.
Yeah, but yeah, it's an interesting thing. But I know you mentioned Dubai, but by the way, for people listening, I'm not from Dubai.
I know everybody.
I visit there occasionally, but I will say one of the things that I do find fascinating, because we talk about sort of like the marketing schemes and policies of the different brands, right? And I happen to think PlayStation's marketing in tertiary and secondary markets is exceptional.
Yes.
And I say this because me and my wife, we love to travel a lot. But I literally feel like I have actually lived it, because I see what sort of marketing they have, in Asian continents, in Arab continents and stuff. And when I was in Dubai, and it was during sort of at the time of the launch of God of War Ragnarok, and I was amazed. Like, I see it all over billboards. They had this thing of like this big axe, like in one of the main Sheikh Zayed Road, and it just like the buzz around it. And I remember on the day my friend, he was like, I'm going to get a PS5 today because of God of War. And we queued up, and I remember at the Emirates Mall, like there was a huge queue, and I was like, right, like, PlayStation's really got this market on lock, and I thought that like they were going to be non-existent over there, because as far as I understood, like, gaming was banned, and they're very picky about what you can and can't play and all this other stuff, because of because it was, especially with God of War in the bloody name, I thought that would be an outright ban. But as it seems, is they're kind of becoming more and more lenient on what they do approve or whatever, and it's pretty much open season right now. And it seems, as soon as that has happened, PlayStation has really capitalized, because they're really spending money out there, and they kind of have captured the culture, and they become like the platform zeitgeist over there, which is really interesting. And obviously they're trying to do the same in China, and they've got the China Hero project and all this marketing, and they've got the sales going on and everything else. I mean, if you think about it, like even this year, two of the key exclusives on PlayStation are actually three, are Chinese made games. So Lost Soul aside, Ballad of Antara, and I believe it's called Where Winds Meet or something. So then next year there's even more with like Phantom Blade Zero, etc. So that they're really making good strides to penetrate extra markets. And the reason I bring this up is because I always hear this conversation about like growth in consoles and blah blah blah, and it always, because Microsoft is doing it, the way to growth is always, you got to put your stuff on more platforms, or you got to go multi-platform, or you got to copy what the platform that has the least growth is doing. And I never really understand it, because like, why would you follow the market loser? Why would you not?
I can't. I'll never understand. That's been the sentiment the entire generation.
No sense.
Any day now, PlayStation will follow Xbox, but I'm like, but why?
It's like, I mean, these people clearly do not have very strong business acumen.
No.
But and then I always say the thing that the kind of the we're missing the forest for the trees here. Another avenue that you can increase growth exponentially is to tap into emergent markets. China is literally an absolute gold mine, and obviously as they're relaxing rules and regulations and stuff over there, what you can and can't play. Because remember, PlayStation, Xbox haven't been on sale there very long.
No, they have not.
They only, I think it was 2015 or 16 or something. So then you have
officially. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's they haven't been available officially, but like the gray market has always been here.
Of course, Same in the Middle East actually. Like you'd have to import it to play all the banned games and stuff. I'm sorry. Just to clear some misconceptions very quickly. It's more than that. Like in China, people don't really have to import the consoles. Like they are imported, but they are available like in stock. I can order like right now a PS5 literally right now online, and I will get a delivered either at the end of the day today at my door or tomorrow morning. It's not now. Now I know they're readily available. No, I know, but even back then, like 2015, 12. I've been here since 2012. I've been kind of coming out of since 2008. And it was like that already, like in online.
To be honest with you,
so just to clarify, sorry.
When you guys are talking about advertisements, mostly when I travel the world, and I travel it quite extensively, I mostly see PlayStation everywhere. I don't even see Nintendo apart from Japan. Like in Dubai.
Likewise.
Yeah, and so in Dubai, like the most insane thing I ever saw was last year when I was there during Christmas. There was I want to say it was bigger than the Rockefeller tree that's in New York. But there was this tree in the Dubai Hills Mall that went from the bottom floor all the way to the top floor, and it was a total PlayStation tree. It was like the most bonkers thing I've seen in my freaking life. I didn't even know that was
insane.
Yeah, and I was like, how is that even a thing? You know, my wife looked at it, she's like, oh my God, I can't even escape gaming, even going to another country. So
and that's what I mean. So I think that is where the growth is going to be, right? Because I remember reading that because of Black Myth Wukong, PlayStation 5 in China was actually, and you can maybe clarify this, Daniel, but there were multiple articles about how the PlayStation 5 sold out over there.
Those articles came from me actually. I mean, the source, the time. But it's true. It's true. They for a very short amount of time, like literally 1 or 2 days. Yes, a lot of sellers online actually sold out their stock, which was unprecedented here. Yeah,
unprecedented. Yeah. So if I was to ask you, like, obviously, we can only predict or analyze or whatever. So based on this kind of push from PlayStation with this China Hero project, obviously they've got a lot of tentpole Chinese developed games coming that are going to be console exclusive, right? Do you think it could claw some consumers away from PC and more towards the PlayStation, or do you think like all of these strategies and stuff are not going to make much of a difference to the overall market penetration?
You mean in China specifically, or worldwide?
Yeah, China specifically.
Yeah, specifically China.
I think China is so big, honestly, in terms of market, that there's enough space for all of it to grow. I don't think PlayStation growing and the console market in general, like the Switch, Nintendo as well, and even the Xbox, it will not necessarily eat away from market share from PC or mobile significantly. If anything, I think, and this is my theory, it will help everything to rise. The whole tide will rise. Like even more people will play on PC, even more people will play on consoles. That's what I think is actually happening, has been happening for the last few years. We haven't seen like a diminishing market share for PC just because Switch has exploded in the last 5 years in China or PS5 as it did. It's actually the opposite. We see even more big hits selling millions and millions on Steam in China, even though they're not officially licensed here. But again, just to keep in perspective, mobile is still vastly, overwhelmingly bigger than PC and consoles in China and in most of the world. In most of the world.
The reason I brought it up is because like a lot of the data shows that the PS5 adoption is a huge portion of it is actually people new to PlayStation, right? So a few years ago we had the 1/3 figure, and then the last holiday quarter, which was a record-breaking quarter, 4.5 million or whatever sold. Actually, more than that. They reported that 42% of all the PS5 sold that quarter, again a record-breaking quarter, were new to PlayStation. So it begs the question, like, where are they coming from? Are they coming from Xbox, PC? And I assume maybe a large portion of it, or a small portion of it, or whatever portion of it, is coming from these emerging markets, right? Because they might be new to the system, or maybe in China they did game on PC or they didn't game on PlayStation. So it's a really interesting thing, because PlayStation themselves keep telling us that actually a sizable portion of PS4 owners have not even transitioned over yet. And I think something like GTA 6.
Everybody's saying GTA 6 is going to be that move. So let me ask you a question though, Nip, because you asked some great questions to Daniel there. You know, shout out to B Money again. He says they still haven't shown the roadmap. You're going back to Nintendo here. He says the new 3D Mario should be announced soon. They are more prepared than they were with the original Switch. And that was one of the things I had read an article on many, many, many months ago, saying Nintendo's really going to come out the gate this time, you know, guns blazing. And I didn't see that for the actual launch lineup, but I did read that article, and I think they have a lot of weapons that they have to come out as far as games. The minute they say, but my only thing to B Money, if he's still in the chat, is B, if you have a 3D Mario, which Wise, there's feedback coming off of your microphone, Wise. I don't know why that is. I have no idea. I think you have the same microphone I have, so I don't know how that's possible. But the why wouldn't you show a Mario game? That's what I don't understand. Why would you not show a Mario game? It doesn't make much sense to me at all. Do you guys think that that's something that would kind of change things when you're talking about dollar amount? If all of a sudden there was a Mario coming out next Thursday along with Mario Kart and then along with Donkey Kong, now all of a sudden that $4.99 seems sweeter, or no? You're like, no, Mooch, exactly what I said is what I mean. It's still too much.
Well, if they can demonstrate that the Mario is a generational leap above what the last Mario that they showed, if they show just basically a reskin of Odyssey, then you're going to be talking about the same situation here. The problem is, and this is also sort of stem off of what Cobra Kai said in the chat. He said, imagine trying to buy a 5-year-old console. It's not, people who are going to buy this console know that the chip is old. Okay, we knew that the chip was taped out, I think, in 2022 or 21. However, people are not buying a Nintendo console to play the latest and greatest on the most powerful hardware. They want to see what Nintendo does with that power. And if nothing else, Nintendo has done one thing. They have shown consistently, time and time again, whether it's their AAA offerings or their AA or single A offerings, that they make a good game. Apart from, like, you know, some of the other, like, sort of development houses, kind of like their Pokemon brand, but most of their games, they come out pretty well polished. They give the experience that they advertise for, and it's a good experience all the way around. And that's what people are expecting. People are waiting to see what Nintendo does. What does the next Zelda look like? What does the next Mario look like? What does the next Splatoon look like? What the next Animal Crossing looks like? And see, therein is the difference between the Switch and all of the other preceding Nintendo consoles. In the other preceding Nintendo consoles, Nintendo had a set-top box and a portable offering. So the portable offering took all of there's people who used to play Smash and people who used to play Pokemon. All of those people were on their portable. They didn't buy their console, their set-top box. But now with the Switch, you're funneling all of your populations of gamers into the same box, which is the Switch. That is why they sold so many Switches opposed to Wii U's and even Wii's, because now they're forcing all of their fans of all of their games to buy the same device.
Right, that's true.
That's what I was trying to say,
exactly.
Wise, is that at this point you could still utilize your Switch, right? So like we just talked about with the Xbox One and with the PS4, I think there's still 40 million people on the PS4 and, like, I don't know, 15 million or something like that. I can't remember the number of people still playing on the Xbox One. And the reason why we know those metrics is because when they start doing the metrics for Call of Duty, they can still see that people are playing Call of Duty on those older consoles, right? So now this next Call of Duty will not be that generation, by the way. They're going to have to make that move. So I think that this year will be very telling in that regard. However, people have been able to get away with that for 5 years.
Yes.
Right? And then even some of the earlier, for example, like the PS5, PS4 bridge games and some of the Xbox One games. But there was that, for the first couple of years there, you could play them on the PS4, like God of War Ragnarok and Horizon and stuff like that. So you could play those on the PS4. So there was no urgency in order to move to that hardware. Couple that with the price increase, I could absolutely see people not making the move, because what the hell is the point? If the kids are happy now and they're still playing their Mario games or whatever, what is that one that just came out last year that was up for Game of the Year? Was that 2 years ago? Mario Wonder or whatever it is? My kids haven't even finished it yet. It looks fantastic on a 70-inch screen plugged in, right? You know what I'm saying? So what's the point of paying, for me, at least at my price, is $800 more just to get a slight upgrade of like an open world Mario Kart? It's insanity. So unless they physically force us to make the move, like Wise was saying, I think that people will continue to balk at those prices. And accessibility, excuse me.
Put yourself in the market of a new parent of an 8-year-old kid. Okay, the kid wants to play Mario Kart. He doesn't even know the number. He just wants to play Mario Kart. As a father, are you going to buy him a $200 price of entry and you can get him all the tracks to his heart content, or are you going to pay $500 plus for an 8-year-old? And therein lies the problem.
The funny thing is the pressure of, like, let's say friends and comrades, whatever, when it comes to consoles, that doesn't happen till about the teenage years anyway. Most of them don't really care. Like, for example, my son, when he turned 12, immediately, like, he was playing at one point, he had a Series S. Actually, that's why I have a Series S hanging around that I just kind of tinker around with when I want to see performance or how bad the performance is. I have that there. He had it, but then he came to me and he's like, I need a PS5. And I'm like, why? And then he goes, all my friends have a PS5 and they're all playing there and this and that or whatever. And he got a PS5. Then my daughter comes to me and says, I need a PS5 a year later, because she saw her brother have one, and then all her brother's friends and everybody else have one. Guess what happened? And that's also something what Nib was talking about earlier. It says, like, you know, the demographics, where are all these new people coming from? It's not so much new people. It's just younger people growing up. And they become the new generation.
We said that a few weeks ago, Mag, or a month or so ago when you were on the show. That's exactly what it is. Everyone's like, oh, the console generation is that. There's always a new generation coming into their own that says, hey, you know what? I want to play on console. Not everybody. I know in the community we have all this stuff. I'm like, oh, PC. Yeah, PC's growing. I get that. But the console, the fact that you're, especially when you're a parent that doesn't game, like, to go out, buy the console, come home, you plug it in, and all of a sudden your child's playing the game. Like, they're not going to come home and be like, oh my God, I got to upgrade the CPU on this. Hold on a second, kid.
You know, it's like running around with sliders.
Yeah.
There's also a flip side to that as well. Like, I get every console, and I tell my kid, I asked my kid just a month ago, I said, okay, I'm putting a pre-order in for the Switch 2. Do you want it? He's 15-year-old. He's like, no, I'm good. So,
yeah, no, I mean, listen.
The thing is, though, Wise, you know,
when I told them the price, they said no, because I'm like, you guys got to.
You know, Wise, you asked me.
Yeah, good idea, man.
Would you rather pay the? Here's the thing, like, and I know maybe it's just a uniquely me thing, but if my son or whatever, if I had other children who are slightly older and they were in the market for a Switch, I have to be honest. The fact that I game as well. Say I didn't have a Switch. Obviously, if I have a Switch, as a different consideration. I would absolutely get the Switch 2 instead of the Switch OLED, because, and I know it's going to sound really bad and people might hate me for saying this, but why wouldn't you pay an extra £100 or an extra £50 or whatever it is and get all those improvements? Like, that's
right.
It's a significant piece of hardware.
That's exactly what B Money's agreeing with. He says that same argument could be said about the PS5 when we were talking about the games. He said went up 100. PS5 went up 100 and offered pretty much the same games as the previous generation. PS5 still had was successful, and the standout games didn't come till later. So
let me tell you something. One of the accessories that was selling out for Switch, it was some crazy little device that basically increased the anti-aliasing, and it was like £70 or something. And I remember it had like crazy number of reviews on Amazon. Like, people were buying this thing just to get slightly better image quality. And you've got this, which is going to offer significantly better image quality, bigger screen, better hardware, you know, all better build, all the rest of it. And I know I'm not saying it's cheap. I'm not saying it's affordable. Obviously, it's quite high price, but I do think you are getting quite a bit more for the money, and it is a much smarter piece of kit. And I think most consumers have kind of been conditioned with inflation and everything else to expect higher prices. And I don't think this is actually significantly higher price, especially when you compare the hardware. I think what the bigger hurdle will be is not the price right now. It will be, because the Switch OLED was already doing great and it's only 50 quid cheaper. I think it will be more so the games. So like for me, the only reason I'm not buying a Switch 2 yet is Mario Kart alone is not enough for me. I need that, Super Mario and Zelda. Like,
right.
And just for me personally, and I need the confluence of multiple.
Now I know it's cross-gen, Nib, but you do have Donkey Kong, and you're also Donkey Kong is Switch 2 only, but you have Metroid Prime 4 also coming out.
You do.
No release date yet.
No release date yet.
There's no release date, but I think it's relatively soon, is it not? And I mean, B-Money was talking about there was also the Mario 3D, so there's still a Mario and a Metroid on its way.
Yeah. I mean, they might get me, to be honest. They might get.
I may be tempted, Nib. I may be tempted. Yeah. I may pull a Nib here. Like if I don't have it pre-ordered, but if next week sometime on next weekend, next Saturday, I'm just at the mall and like Mag was saying, and I'm just out there and I happen to see it. I mean, I'm not going to tell you I might not pick it up. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not running out to get it, but if it's in front of me, I might pick it up because listen, there's enough out there in the promise, like B Money was saying. There's enough out there in the promise that I think they've done their homework. I think the next 12 months on the Switch is going to be quite miraculous.
Well, if
actually,
you really want to get it, just going in and buying it, you need to go the night before because everybody's doing a launch the night before. So.
Oh well, I appreciate that, Wise. Thank you for the tip there, buddy. It's outstanding. Shout out to Warawana. He says Night Rain has over 300,000 players on Steam. Wild. Well, I mean, Warawana, you say that's wild. Listen, Elden Ring was probably one of this generation's darlings, and it's also a phenomenon on how Souls didn't really, they didn't rewrite the way that their game looks and plays, but they rewrote how the game, as far as open world and this and that. So that doesn't surprise me. I know it's sitting somewhere. Well, I didn't look at the latest, but it was somewhere around 78 for a Metacritic score. Now, again, on Metacritic doesn't mean a whole lot on this channel. I'm not saying that's a big deal. It is a bit of a metric that you kind of gauge when you're talking about it. If all other categories are low or all categories are high, but ultimately, I think that's not really that big of a deal. And plus, everybody loves something new. Man, they love something new. Wasted with Y says, "Hey, Mag, why did RFK force your restaurant to close? He probably had some red dye 3 in that sauce. Mag, I'm not sure what's going on. Apparently, Wise Old Gamer has information on the inside that we're unaware of. But nonetheless, thank you, Wise. I appreciate that. So I don't know how you guys feel about that, but yeah, does anybody else have anything on the Switch? I see maybe I'm getting yelled at. I see all caps. Stone Patrol says, "Wait, Mooch, you might just pick it up, ? So the price is low enough for people to just splurge on one. You said it yourself." I
think it is. Like,
I don't, Stone, maybe, are you mixing up categories or are you talking about just Nintendo? I never said that I wouldn't buy it. I never said that at all. I don't even know if I commented on $4.99 is too much. I've been sitting here trying to play the contrarian with the panel saying, listen, I understand that you're saying $500 is a lot, but Mario Kart is one of the games that we play the most in the house right now. So that's bona fide right there. And then you've got Donkey Kong, which is exclusive to the Switch too. And we haven't had a Donkey Kong it's been, in quite some time. So Stoned, I'm not really sure. He said, see my previous tweet about PC handhelds. Trying to see here about Cobra Kai here. All right.
Not the target though. Like
the thing I would say. Yeah, exactly. The thing I would say about Switch 2, which is slightly different from like a PS5 or a Series X or whatever, is because you do sometimes play this thing in handheld. It's not just purely a docked system. Whereas, like, I don't actually give a rat's ass about the design and build quality of the PS5, really, as long as it lasts the whole generation. Like, whereas something like the Switch, because just the build and the tactility and the functionality and the feedback of the buttons and how the Joy-Cons now magnetically click in, the smaller bezel, the size of the screen, the HDR, the fucking, the 120 hertz, all the rest of it, those things actually much more notable in a system that you do occasionally use handheld. And that's why I think even just outside of the performance difference, as in, GPU, CPU, SoC, etc., those things would compel me to upgrade or spend a bit of extra money, because they're much more tangible differences than just what you would get in a, if it's just docked all the time. So, and I get it. It's too much for a lot of people, and I'm not debating against that. But I think you have to remember that these sort of finer things, it's like when you buy a mobile phone. Mobile phones don't really change that much these days, but little things like build quality, handhold, how the UI is and how swift it is, those things can make a real difference to your day-to-day operation. And I think in that regard, the Switch from the Switch 2, it probably is much more of a sort of an upgrade, especially in feel and daily use, than we're probably giving it credit for.
Shout out to Babor Country. I agree with you, Nib, by the way. He says here, I think Digital Foundry, and this is interesting because, again, this is things in the community. And when I say the community, I don't just mean on X or on YouTube here, but there's the hardcore, I should say the hardcore gaming community. Babor says, I think Digital Foundry has convinced an entire generation of sheep that the 70 to 90 series cards are mainstream. They always use them to down talk consoles. They should use the 5060 for all tests. So I'm not going to sit here and say the 5060 should be the actual leveling system. But, it is true. Like, every time there's something comes out, they're like, let's take this insanely expensive PC and put it up against the PS5 Pro. Let's see what you got to say about that, John. And you're like, all right. You know what I mean? Yeah. So everyone watches it. And Meg, you kind of... We're numb to it now. I'm going to be honest with you. I like going to Digital Foundry for certain interesting tidbits on technical abilities or capabilities of whether it's hardware or how things are performing. When I want to know how they're going to play on PS5 versus PC or Xbox. I get that. But at the same time, you do have to do apples for apples, right? So they're doing the Pro now against PC. They don't do the Pro. They don't do the Pro. Say again. Go ahead, Meg.
Which we called. We knew that was going to happen. As soon as they announced the Pro, they're like, all right, well, now they're going to compare it to a $3,000 card.
Right.
I'm like, well, come on. And I get it. I get what they're doing. Listen, they're doing it for engagement. They're doing it for the clicks and for the money and whatever else. I don't really watch them anymore. I've had a few run-ins with them. By the way, I was right on both of them. Thank you very much. But they were very smug about it, and they didn't say, oh, well, But it is what it is. It's just not really my thing. But yeah, it's kind of funny that they do utilize or they do tend to expose products that are not in the mainstream. Not everybody has those. Everybody pretends they have them when they go on Twitter and fight about it, or on YouTube. They pretend they have it, but they don't. Yeah. And as a result of the fact that they don't, you're not representing the market as a whole. You're representing probably less than 10% of the market by doing so. Yes, it's something to strive for if that's what you're looking for. Say, hey, I would love to have that one day or whatever if I save up my money and my paper route and this and that. It'd be kind of cool to have a 5090 or this and that. But the thing is, you're representing less than 10% of the market. And this also boils down to the last hour of what we've been talking about with the Switch. What we're talking about accessibility and how people will still buy it. We are still talking about a market that's less than 10%. This is not what they're looking for in order to measure the metrics of success. They're going to need that 85 to 90% that's out there that may be on the fence based on everything that we've already discussed ad nauseum.
Agreed. Completely
Mooch,
agree.
I gotta go.
Meg, listen, I'm going to do outros right now, Meg, so stick around so we can get a great outro from you. Shout out to Wasted with Wise, we had to leave early. He says, sorry, I have to run, guys. He goes, hey, Meg, what do we get for $5? Shout out to the great Wasted with Wise, guys. Go over.
Anything you want.
Go over and check out his show tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern. Shout out to Wise. Wise, I appreciate you being here. I know you work late as well and do a lot of things after your work thing, and you still made the show, so thank you. I want to say thanks to everybody that's here. Outstanding show tonight. Or for Daniel, it's this morning. I want to say thanks to the chat. Thank you guys for the super chats. Guys, hit that like button. There's still 300 people here after almost 3 hours. Phenomenal show. Outstanding show. Let me just go in reverse order and say, Daniel, Thank you for coming on the show, buddy. Great to have you on. It was very impromptu. I saw you absolutely catch Twitter on fire, and I said, I got to get this guy on the show. I got to talk to him. So, Daniel, great having you on. Let people know where they can find you on X and other locations, and hopefully we have you back on the show real soon.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me. I had a blast, honestly, just listening to you guys. On
Thank
Twitter or X, I'm at Daniel Olimac, or if you just search Daniel Camilo. And I have my Substack called Gaming in China. If you want to have a look at that, I write there pretty often. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. Great to have you on the show. The great Mag, everybody. Mag, outstanding show. Thank you for some of the insight, too, that you bring from behind the scenes. I appreciate that. You know, you always do a great job on your YouTube channel, also on XNC, but you bring some of that to CrossFire, and it livens things up, and we really appreciate it. So, Mag, let people know where they can find you, and thanks for being here tonight.
Hey, no problem, man. It's always a pleasure being here. And I knew Mooch was going to ask me this week. I had a feeling. Put the link to my channel in the chat. I'm not trying to be,
no, go ahead.
But I totally am. Either way, my link's in the channel. In the chat. You could check it out. Boy, and you know what's funny? When I wasn't talking about 5-10 minutes ago, did I piss off a lot of people? Because I put in the title, and by the way, it's a fact. Okay, I don't like. I've now heard it from like 7 different people. They're like, "Yeah, it's canceled. It's not pushed aside." Bullshit corporate talk. And then when they're like, "You should see the comments on the video I just launched."
I'm gonna check it out after this.
Meg, how could they cancel something that's not announced, asshole? And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
You're getting yelled at, are you? Oh, man.
Oh, it is funny. It is funny. But people just get so in their feelings about something that when you should really, at the end of the day, just be a consumer. But anyway,
that's right.
It was an awesome show. We had a great time, great panel, great chat. You guys are all amazing. And Mooch, before you go, I'm going to go right now. But before you go, you got a couple more super chats that came in. But everybody have yourself a wonderful night. We'll talk to y'all real soon. And I'm sure I'll be back on this show at some point. Mooch, thanks for the invite, buddy.
Always, Mac. Right. Great to have you on, buddy. Thank you. The great Ryan Landis, he says, thanks for a great show, Mooch, chat, and guest. Thank you, Ryan, for the super chat. Babor's back. He says the 4090, they never talk about the heat it produces or the size of that thing, almost PS5 size. The power consumption also is out of control. Babor, you're not wrong, buddy. Believe me. You're not wrong. It absolutely cooks the room that people are playing in.
If I throw in some, oil on the pan before we go.
Sure, Nib. Why not? It is CrossFire.
It is CrossFire. I mean, let's be honest. Like a lot of this sentiment is, I believe, insecurity. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying there isn't insecurity on the PlayStation side as well. But by and large, people who buying a PS5 Pro, even though they are enthusiasts in the console space, they are not maybe as enthusiast as those high-end PC gamers who are buying the absolute best rig, spending thousands of dollars or whatever, like a 4090 or whatever. But like Mag was saying earlier, a lot of the people who are arguing about this sort of stuff on Twitter don't even have those types of rigs to begin with.
No, they don't. No.
And it really is a kind of thing where, like, oh, damn, there's this console equivalent now that's kind of a mid-range PC equivalent, and it's essentially competing with the kind of gear that we actually own.
That's right.
Because if you actually go by this Steam hardware survey and just sales in general, like such an insignificant number of people actually have those super high-end GPUs. And, like we said on your show previously, most don't even have a GPU as performant or more performant than the PS5, let alone the PS5 Pro. And I think that does kind of irk a lot of PC gamers. But yeah, I mean, it's weird because like there's so much contradiction. Like there's a lot of like big PC channels, people on Twitter and X or whatever and YouTube. Mm-hmm. Some of them have like tens and tens of thousands of followers.
Yes.
And I've literally called some of them out, and it's like, hold on a minute. Before the PS5 Pro came out, you said if the PS5 Pro was to have a GPU the equivalent performance of a 7700 XT, it would be closer to an entire new generation of performance than just a mid-gen refresh. Then the thing comes out and it's more performant than a 7700 XT, and the next thing you know, you're bashing it. It's not performant enough. And then it's like other people are like, if it's really as powerful as the leaks suggest, it would have to be $700 and above. It's not going to be that powerful. And then it is exactly the same specs as the leaks, and it happens to also be $700.
Yes.
And then they're like, it's too expensive. It's like, but you literally said it should be that price if the specs were real. And I did want to clarify one thing, because like I think there's a lot of confusion even among the PC, because a lot of the PC and console people who speak about this stuff, they're not actually knowledgeable on it. It's almost that they talk about and regurgitate things that they're not aware of, or they don't understand the details of. And there's this whole thing about like flopflation, right? It's a word Sony said. RDNA 3 GPUs have dual FP, so just because they have double the teraflop count of the RDNA 2, it does not necessarily mean they're double the performance, which is why a 7700 XT performs so similar to a 6800, which is the previous generation of architecture, despite the 7700 XT having double the teraflop count. Because the double the dual FP count doesn't really make much real world difference. But the thing with the PS5 Pro in particular, if you go back to the leaked documents right now, and if you don't believe me, everyone listening, just literally go and Google it right now. The Moore's Law leaked documentation, it said 67 teraflops, right? But it specifically said 67 teraflops of 16-bit teraflop count, FP16. Mark Cerny in his video literally put an image up saying that the PS5 Pro is 67 teraflops of FP16. Yes. It's just not 35 teraflops of FP32. Instead, it's 16.7, because as he said in the video, they didn't need 32-bit calculations. It was irrelevant, so they didn't put that piece of customization in there, whereas they did need 16-bit integer calculations, which is why they went with the 67 teraflops. So teraflops are kind of meaningless anyway, but nothing in the leaks was actually wrong. Every single line of the leaks was accurate. So
I remember that. I remember that controversy.
Yeah, because I know a lot of I've heard a lot of PC cats be like, oh, but the leaks aren't real. If it was the same performance as the leaks, then it would justify the price. Bro, you don't know what you're talking about. Every single line of the leaks is accurate. You just don't know the difference between FP16 and FP32, nor do you know why they made the design decisions they did. PlayStation is not in the habit of wasting money or doing customizations that do not benefit game design. So they've obviously looked at it and thought, okay, we don't use much 32-bit, we do 16-bit, so we'll put the time and effort into this thing. So it's a lot of weirdness going on with that thing. And me personally, considering last year's fiscal year reports for PlayStation, literally in the report, again, it's directly from Sony, said that they were still making losses on PS5. Yes, the disc version became profitable in 2021 for a very short period of time, but because of COVID and lockdown and chip shortages, it went back into making a loss. And again, in their financials, they literally write in black and white that they're making a loss from the hardware even last year. So if the PS5 vanilla is making PlayStation a loss at $300, $400, $500, how are people expecting a PS5 Pro, which is considerably more expensive to manufacture and has a much more advanced SoC, to be the same price? People are not using their logic in any fashion.
No.
These are people who have no, like I said last time, it's a kindergarten level of business and the the metrics and costs that go into these things. And as far as I've read from different analysts and stuff, the margins are actually very small still on the PS5 Pro. So this notion that it should be considerably cheaper is just not grounded in reality.
The margins are very, very small on them.
Very small, yeah.
So the price is...
making a loss on the PS5, and the margin on the PS5 Pro is super slim. They're not charities, dude. They need to they're going to cover their asses. So it's a weird thing that I've heard people say, oh, the PS5 Pro should be 400. I just think you guys live on Mars. You live in some different world. Which is just not, anyway, whatever. Well, that's my hot take.
Shout out to Babor. He's gonna ride there and get you even more riled up. He says that's why the PS5 games have low PC sales. Few have the hardware to play these games at 60 on PS5 base settings. Babor, thank you so much. Shout out to the great Southbound and Down. Southbound, great to have Southbound here. Southie was one of the original people on Crossfire. Shout out to South. South, hope you and the family are doing great. Great to see you here. Babor, I blame you for getting Nib all riled up on the third hour of the show. You can't do that to Nib. Nib, let people know where they can find you, buddy. As always, thank you for your insight, your information. You bring the facts with you. You bring the numbers with you. And I love the confidence. Nib, let them know where they can find you, buddy. Love it when you're on the show.
Thank you. It's just X, NIB95_. I just have one final thing. It was great to have you on here, Daniel. I will say you're going to have a lot of fanboys who come at you now because of some of the stuff you've shared. I will just say this. If they are attacking you, your character, and your alliances or allegiances, just know that they don't have any leg to stand on. If they can actually come at you for the things that you're discussing and rebuke your actual arguments and data, then they have a point. But what you'll find is 99.999% of those who come at you won't actually challenge your points or your data. They'll just, ad hominem attacks. So just remember, they're not worth the time.
Yes, exactly. Yes, yeah. Choose your conversations on X. Don't worry about all of them.
Yeah, although I love arguing with the person.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't go. By the way, great advice by Nib. Don't watch what Nib does. Because Nib will continue to argue with somebody. I mean, they're great conversations, by the way. Nib, you go back, they're great conversations. But Nib definitely keeps going back and forth. They're like, actually, let me show you this chart. And then he goes into it. You don't get chat. What is it? What do they call it? Nib GPT? It's great. It's outstanding. The great Nib, everybody.
I'm
Daniel,
an AI bot.
Yeah, you are an AI bot. It's great to have you. Shout out to Great Southbound as well. I will definitely hit you up, brother. Absolutely. The Great Southbound and down, everybody. Guys, please hit the like button on the way out. Tell people about the show. Send it out to your friends and family. Let them know that Crossfire is live every Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Guys, we are going to be on twitch.tv all weekend long. Mooch TV, M00CHTV. Drop the O's for zeros. We hope to see you guys over there. Go over and follow as soon as this show's over. If you go over and see DPS, where the great slow-mo backslapping Gaming Forte are, tell them Mooch sent you. Until then, go play some games, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Peace out and good night.
Mooch, that guy almost